Welcome back to HPP, the podcast that talks with tomorrow's hoop stars. I am Rich Harrison. Thank you for joining us again. Today I am joined by Drew Barton, and later we will be joined by Cam Reel, who apparently is in the midst of a commute. And we don't have a special guest today. We were hoping to, but prospects right now are kind of busy, and players who aren't in the draft really are kind of taking time off. So it's a tough time to get a hold of guests, but we're still working on it. So Drew, how you doing? What have you been up to? It's been a while since you've been on the show.
Yeah, I've just been busy. Obviously, the Sonoma State, the year ended, so I had to wrap up. We hosted the conference softball tournament, so I was in charge of basically running that. Been very heavy on the job hunt. So right now, it looks like I'm going to tentatively. I agreed to go work at Cal State East Bay for the coming year. So
Okay.
still a Division II program. The head men's basketball coach is actually the brother of the coach at Menlo, so I have a bit of a relationship there. I have applications out at some other places, some D1s, some other places. So they kind of know that my plan is to still basically look until August. And once August hits, if I haven't landed anything that's a bit higher profile, I'll just lock in for a year there. It's only 35 minutes from my house, so my commute's going to be much better. It's still going to keep me in athletics, going to let me kind of do my thing still. They actually run a really good ship there. Their AD and their associate AD have some D1 background, so they run a much tighter, less strenuous, like spastic organization, like a lot of D2s where it's one guy or two guys doing everything. It's more structured, which is nice. And I'm also hoping to make a run at it's like an internship part-time role with the WCC in a basketball operations capacity. So I applied
Oh,
for a job to be an SID with the conference a year ago, or maybe 6 months ago. Went really well until they decided, kind of out of the blue, to eliminate the position and just not go through with it. So hopefully this is a chance to get back in. But just been busy. Job stuff is keeping me busy. I've talked to D1s, tried to get my foot. Still haven't been able to land that coveted position, but I'm still working in sports, so I can't complain.
right. Couple of notes. When we were doing our conference championship tournament show, the only conference that didn't have their bracket up was the West Coast Conference.
They're
So
The
they
one
definitely
SID they have is a good dude, but the other SID like left, or the second, I forget how they left, and instead of putting a second person in to support, they haven't. So I don't really know how they run a whole conference, especially one with two higher profile basketball programs. How you
right,
run a conference with one SID? Not my place to judge. It's on them, but I just feel like you kind of need a second pair of hands. It's too much for one guy.
right. Actually, I should have told you this months ago. It just hit me. The Big East, the guy who does the Big East, retired this last year. So the Big East, this past Big East tournament was his last one. So I know you had some interviews with D1 schools. I know a couple of them really you really were hoping to get, but we don't have to talk about that. But sorry that didn't happen. But yeah, all right. So you will eventually. You're still a very young man, so
Somebody's gonna
um,
hit.
I told you this, I don't know, a while ago, but at my school, my alma mater, D2 East Stroudsburg, the guy who was doing the basketball for them um, moved on to Temple. So, that was and he wasn't. I don't know. I'd say he was in his 30s. So, yeah,
Yeah, a buddy of mine, and we can end on this, but he was basically did NAI, played for 20 years and did a bunch of NAI. He kind of became like an SID legend in the NAI space. Really good guy. I met him at the kind of SID national convention in Vegas last year. And I knew him because he was an SID, or like the associate AD of communications for a school in Menlo's conference. So we knew each other. And I got to meet him in person, and he actually left that place to go to ASU, and it took him 20 years. Some of it was by choice. Some of it was like he had young kids. He had kids, and he's like, I didn't want to have to
right,
travel as much
right.
and everything. But it said he took him 20 years to land, that spot. So as long as I don't have to leave sports, I can deal with the nepotism and the ghosted, no responses. Those do suck, but you know?
I mean, that's a new thing. When you apply for a job, no matter what level, whether it was Lowe's or you were looking for an executive position at IBM, you always got some kind of response. Um, Very odd that some of these schools, don't get back to you, or I'm sure you're not the only one. Um,
Yeah, I got an email from a place actually about 3 hours ago. I applied for that job in January, and they just sent me the email back 3 hours ago. So,
well, at least they responded.
yeah, but what it is.
I will say, that I know a lot of D1 SIDs. Some of them I know pretty well. And, they might as well be considered part of the coaching staff. I mean, they travel, fly with the team. Um, and they're busy during the games. They're busy after the games. So yeah, you definitely hustle when you're dealing with a program like Illinois or Michigan or Alabama or whatever. All right. So let's open up the college notebook. And you know what? So many guys withdrew from this draft. This is the draw of NIL, and we were talking about this a lot in the last couple of episodes. That it really opened up the door for those who stayed in the draft. So we'll talk about that more later, but I'll just give you an example. RJ Lewis of St. John's, we considered a borderline second round pick, had him around the 60s. Well, now, with all these guys pulling out, now he's smack in the middle of the second round.
Yeah.
So yeah, the guys who did stay definitely benefited from these guys leaving. And we have a long list here, and this is only the key ones, but I will read down to some of the ones, say the top 10 or so. Taha Pettiford of Auburn is returning to Auburn. Baron Philon's returning to Bama. Yaxel Lenberg's returning, and he now goes to Michigan. Alex Condon returns to Florida. Boogie Flan is returning, and he transferred to Florida. PJ Haggerty's coming back, and he transferred to Kansas State immediately after. Carter Knox returns to Arkansas. Otega Owe returns to Kentucky. Mackenzie Mbako returns and is going to Texas A&M. Darian Williams is returning, and he goes from Texas Tech to NC State. A couple other ones that we were on the fence about. Miles Bird of San Diego State, he's returning. Miles Uzan of Houston's returning, and that had some far-reaching effects, which we'll talk about later.
Definitely.
So, of all of this list, what are your impressions about Haggerty going to K-State's a big addition for them? Mbako should be, a big addition for A&M. Boogie Fland, of course, is going to be a big addition for Florida. So what are your thoughts on this list?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, as a college basketball fan, it's shocking but kind of refreshing. Like, we're going to have all these great players. I mean, the guys you all listed off are all of them at a minimum are all conference talents. And then you have guys like a Haggerty, a Lendenborg that are like all American potential candidates. So for the actual depth of the sport, it's great. It does give credence to the NIL argument that a lot of these guys are probably, if not, I would say almost all the guys on this list were probably guys we looked at in that second round to maybe like those undrafted but picked up right after draft kind of guys.
Except for maybe, Pettiford, Philon.
I was gonna say the top three guys, Pettiford, Philon, and Lendenborg, I were like, those guys were going to get drafted. Lendenborg is the biggest shock to me because this was a guy that I think most places in general had in that 20 to 30 range.
I didn't.
Right.
See,
right.
And it's not shocking to me. ESPN really was touting him up. We made a joke about they must be getting kickbacks from their agent.
More so shocking in the sense that this was a guy that he was gonna get drafted. I do agree that he was probably like higher second round guy, but the way that this was going with all these guys pulling out, that's when I was surprised he pulled out because I thought with all these withdrawals and the way he was being hyped up in the media, and GMs, front offices are prone and susceptible to persuasion and being influenced by that to a degree. I thought he was going to be a lock to go just based on everything that was around him. So I think it's good for the sport. It speaks, dividends to the NIL money. It's going to be really interesting. A lot of these guys, ended up at new homes. I know the Haggerty saga was, originally the reports where he wanted $4 million in a starting point guard job. And I think very quickly, like a lot of guys came out with those demands and they weren't met and they found themselves, going to schools that maybe weren't their first option or so. I think you're seeing schools like an NC State, really committing to basketball now. I mean, they go get
Again, NC
yeah.
State used to be a power for a long
No,
time,
for sure.
but
Like
they've kind of
really,
been middling, even though they made the Final
yeah,
Four, just 2 years ago. They've kind of been a middling
yeah,
team, but for the longest time, NC State was right there with Duke and North Carolina and
sure.
Maryland.
And it's just them pushing the chips in, and they've had. I mean, look at their transfer class. And you go get a Darren Williams. I mean, they're pushing the chips in. So it's interesting. I think it's a new age, and where those college stars that are in that junior to senior range that are still hovering around low first rounder, second rounder, undrafted, it just doesn't really make sense for them to go financially. So again, I'm excited to see another year of Pettiford. I'm excited to see, Yaxel play at that high major, and we're going to kind of find out really how good he is playing for Michigan in terms of the level of competition. But I mean, it's the new age, it's the new era, and like you said, you look at the list of guys who stayed in, like RJ Lewis is going to get drafted now. It's going to happen. I feel pretty confident in saying that somebody's going to pick him up. I think a guy like Jace Richardson, who again, his stock rose really quickly because Michigan State as a team was so good, and he kind of, for a team that didn't have a face, he kind of became the de facto face of the team. Like I've seen him go as high as lottery, top 10 even. I saw him go 10 on a mock draft I was reading the other day, and I was like, wow. I think some of that's hype. I think some of that's just, people are kind of panicking about how like so many guys have withdrawn. So it's going to be kind of a new age, and I think there's going to be more players manipulating the draft and using their NIL and college as leverage now to really kind of be like, if I'm not getting promises, I'm not coming because I'm not walking away from a $2 million payday and living a college life to go be an unpromised draft prospect or to be a second rounder. So
Yeah, I mean, just about everybody on this list was headed to the G League.
yeah,
I
yep,
mean, and if they weren't, they certainly weren't. Even if they didn't spend the majority of their time in the G League, they weren't going to play a lot of minutes in the NBA. I mean,
sure,
maybe Pettiford comes off the bench for 15 minutes here and there, to provide offensive spark. But, I mean, really, who else on this list was going to get a ton of playing time?
yeah. None of these guys screamed, instant NBA rotation guy. I
Right.
mean, yeah, you said G League would probably have been my bet for every single one of them, with the exception of, again, maybe the top three or four names on there: Condon, Lendenberg, Philon, Pettiford, maybe Boogie Fland. I could see maybe like doing that bouncing back and forth kind of thing. But
Right.
outside
If
of that,
Alex Con is drafted, okay, so let's say he goes middle of the second round or
right,
end of the second round. What's he going to do? He's going to be the third string center. He's going to be
right,
like Tony Bradley is for Indiana,
yeah,
or whoever the hell Oklahoma City's third string center is,
yeah,
who never plays. Yeah, it was just going to be like that. And yeah, all right. So now we're going to talk about the guys that kind of I thought might have, pulled out and joined this list.
sure,
And I'm calling them the not so ready, NBA ready players in it, staying in the draft. And I stand by these guys are not NBA ready. I would be shocked if they had a big impact in their first year. They're all in the draft. Here's one thing I do want to say is, every year we really get excited about the draft. I mean, hell, we're a draft show.
for sure,
But you know what? These days, with all the developmental leagues and the depth of the leagues and the number of players we have, you're lucky if you really have 10 impact rookies. And that's a stretch.
hmm,
If you look at anybody's draft board, maybe there's 5 guys, 10 at most, that are really going to, have an impact in this draft. I mean, I think Cooper Flag is going to have an immediate impact,
sure,
but he's going to be the very, very rare exception. Now, another thing I want to say about this list before I read the names off, or maybe I'll read the names off, let you comment, and then I'll throw my comments in. But
Sure.
here's the players I consider not NBA ready, and I thought they might pull out of the draft. Derek Queen of Maryland, Carter Bryant of Arizona, Thomas Sorber. That's a shocker that he's
Yeah.
Jace Richardson, Michigan State, and I too have heard, him being a lottery pick.
Yeah.
Do not see it. Do not see it at all. Tyrese Proctor, Adu Thiero of Arkansas, Cedric Coward, Washington State. We spent a ton of time talking about Cedric last week.
Yeah.
And my whole point was this guy has not done it at a high level. He just has.
I was going to comment on him when we get there.
Right.
I'll give my thoughts.
Hold that thought, and I'll finish the list. RJ Lewis, who I said is looking better. This decision's looking better now. You subtract everybody out. Drake Powell, North Carolina, and Yadek Niedenhauser of Penn State. Now, I kind of have asterisks by those two guys, and I'll tell you why. They both tested it out exceptional. Yeah. Drake Powell was like one of the all-time performers at the combine overall. Niedenhauser, for his size at 6'10", 6'11", was unbelievable how he tested out athletically.
Right.
These guys' stock is probably not getting any higher. They're not basketball players yet. They're just athletes.
Yeah,
you know? Sure. But I think that athleticism could very well get them drafted. And I don't know if their stock's going to get any higher, because imagine Drake Powell goes back to North Carolina, okay? And let's say he improves, but he doesn't improve that much. Let's say maybe he averages, 11 points a game, 5 rebounds, a couple assists, maybe a steal, a block a game. Nobody's going to be overly impressed. And now they're going to say, okay, he's just another athlete, doesn't have any skill. Right now, NBA people are only thinking about the upside. And I think it's not surprising he stayed and Niedenhauser stayed in this draft. Niedenhauser especially, he hasn't proven, he played in the MAC, then he played at Penn State, and he really hasn't been overly productive in any of those places. So, I mean, he was pretty productive at Penn State this year, but if you just look at his numbers, you're not drafting that guy. It was only what he did at the combine that made people's eyes like, whoa, this guy's a real athlete. So go ahead. I said what I was going to say.
No, yeah, I totally agree. I think for the bottom two guys, Powell and Niederhauser, it's pretty obvious that I think they're the kind of the rare exception. Rich, we've done this a long time together. I'm always a proponent for guys go and put up the production. We always talk about what are you doing against top 25s? What are you doing against the big, the Power Fives or those elite mid majors, the San Diego States? But with these guys, it's are they really going to get any better as basketball players? Probably not. And if anything, when next year's cycles of freak athletic athletes come in, they're just going to become another one in the bunch. So I agree with their decision. Same thing with RJ. We know he's kind of proven at the college level he can play against anyone, against anywhere. You're Big East Player of the Year for a reason.
For the NCAA tournament.
yeah. But so those ones make sense. I really like Jace Richardson. I think but not enough. I'm not saying go be one and done. I think he fits really well in that system.
I like Jace Richardson as an early second-round pick.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I like him as a college basketball player. I love the energy he brings, and again, I think he was kind of the victim. Not really victim, but I guess he was on a Michigan State team that all we talked about all year was they're so deep. These guys got 10 guys, 11 guys that can play and give impact minutes, and I think when you're on a team that doesn't have that face, given his youth. He kind of had some great highlights. He came on strong down the stretch. He kind of just became the face. Therefore, he, I think, was elevated into conversations that he probably wasn't ready to be in yet. Proctor, I think Proctor's what he is at this point.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Is he getting?
That's the only thing with him.
Yeah, there's probably he would have to have a fantastic. And Thiero. Well, Thiero probably has more room for growth, but sure. Proctor, he would have to have an outstanding, a Walter Clayton type year to move out of the second round, where he
would have to evolve into this lethal on-ball scorer or an elite playmaker who's shoot 40% from three and hand out 8 assists a game. And I just don't. Maybe, but I just
he's still pretty young.
Yeah, So I think for him, I'm kind of like, you know what, with all these withdrawals, go be a middle second rounder, most likely. Hopefully the shot, you've proven that the shooting has improved. Hopefully you can be an off ball kind of secondary ball handler who can hit spot up threes, and I think he'll be fine. The big one, and I know you guys said you talked about it, Cedric Howard to me is one where I just, as a West Coast guy who's watched him play from Eastern Washington, obviously to, was it 7 games with Washington State.
Mm-hmm.
I this is everyone keeps comparing him to Kawhi. I keep seeing like Kawhi comparisons, but trust me, I know. I keep seeing Kawhi comparisons, and I think it's for me. This is the Jalen Williams, the Santa Clara Jalen Williams effect, where people are looking at this
Yeah.
guy who metrically pop flies off the page. You're like, holy crap, this guy metrically, he's got the wingspan, he has the look, he moves well, the stats, the raw stats back it up. But again,
Well, no, they don't. No,
I'm
they
just talking
don't.
like I'm talking
No,
about points.
not if you look at his best year at Washington or at Eastern Washington, it wasn't
No,
like
but I'm saying like you look at points, rebounds, you're like they're not awful. Like we're not looking at a guy who averaged 14
no, they were
rebounds.
very good. And he also
Right.
played out of position. He was like a 6'5" center on that team.
No, so that's what I'm saying. Like if you just take the quickest possible snapshot, like if you pull up his ESPN page right now, 18 points, 7 boards, 4 assists, 56% from the field, and you look at the metrics, it's very easy to quickly go, oh, are you kidding me? 6'6" with a 7'1" wingspan, and the last guy that came out of that conference who had like metrics of that caliber and those basic raw stats just made all NBA team is in the NBA Finals. I think this is a massive difference.
Yeah, but he only played 7
No, I agree.
games.
I just think people are
And
tricking
the one
themselves
good
into this.
opponent was Iowa, and he went 3 for 10 for 9
For
points.
sure. Oh no, I agree. I think the moment you pull off the rose-colored glasses and you do not even a deep dive, you just turn the page from the front of the book, you open the book, it gets a lot uglier quicker, in my opinion. I mean, you look at his last full year of college basketball, every high major opponent he played, he was awful against for the most part. USC, 2 for 10, they got blown out. Washington State, 1 for 5, they lost by 10. Stanford last year, not this year, who was surprisingly good. Last year, Stanford, he was 5 for 8, but they lost by 15. Like I'm very concerned that again, it's the Jalen Williams syndrome where this mid-major guy who tested really well and all that, and it has popped, is getting into people's minds. I saw him go as high as 9. I saw Coward go as high as 9. I saw him go again, a comparison saying Kawhi
No,
Leonard.
he is. I called him last week, and I hate to do this because he was a
For
guest
sure.
on the show,
Yeah,
just like Jalen Williams was.
totally.
The difference is Jalen Williams had done it for 4 years, not
I think it's
necessarily at
3.
the highest. Was it only 3?
I think it was 3, but yeah.
But it was at the highest level. We saw him play against Gonzaga. We saw him play against St. Mary's and some other
Totally.
good teams. I added up Cedric, how many games against Power 6 teams, and I was
Yep.
including the old Pac-12
Yep.
and the Big East.
Yep.
So if you add them up, he played 12 games in 4 years.
Totally.
And a lot of them, they weren't good results. And as I said last week, a lot of them weren't against, like when he played against Pac-12 schools, he wasn't playing UCLA and Arizona. He
Yeah.
was playing Washington State and Stanford.
Yep.
So, and what I called him was he's the flavor of the month.
Yep.
Everybody doesn't want to miss out on this bandwagon. Half of these people that are probably talking him up on Twitter haven't even seen the guy play.
Yeah, I would 100%. It just to me I was shocked when I saw first off I was shocked when he hit the portal that is because so as someone I follow this, I've moved into the Gonzaga space pretty well. I've actually kind of climbed up those ranks on Twitter and on other social platforms. I was hearing that it was a target for Gonzaga, that they were trying to find that battle replacement. I was like, okay, the raw prospects there, he'll develop under few. I'm with that. Like that, his recruitment all of a sudden became Alabama and Duke. And I was like,
Well,
what?
Alabama is like Arkansas.
Right.
It's like Musselman, they recruit everybody.
But even then, I was like, Alabama and Duke were like pushing chips in on this guy. And I was like, whoa. And then the next thing I hear is he's a top 10 pick. He's the next Kawhi Leonard. He's staying in the draft. And I just was like, this is going. I hope it works for him. I wish nothing ill. But there's no way from anything that I've seen. I've watched him closely the last 2 years, these 7 games, because they came in the WTC. And then last year, this one to me makes no sense. I don't know how. I mean, unless you're putting stock into beating South Dakota State or Northern Colorado, I don't know how you can say this guy's a top 10 pick.
Right, right. And here's the thing: look how Duke recruited last year. They recruited guys with significant names, but they basically expected them to be role players,
Right.
to support their 5 stars coming in.
Yep.
And their 5 stars that were still on the roster.
Yeah.
I think Duke had him penciled in as a support player.
Yes. I think he would have been a low-end starter / like off the bench guy.
Well, he could have
like,
been Sion James of this year.
that's what I mean. Yeah.
Different positions.
A lower tier starter of like, hey, your job is you're going to start as a veteran of college basketball, but you're going to be a defender, a rebounder, move the ball, and then obviously knocking open shots, which role-wise, sure. But again, when you're talking about Kawhi Leonard, who, whatever you feel about him, is a Hall of Famer, one of the best players of the last decade at his peak. When you're talking about comparing to Jalen Williams, even, where I think that's where more people's have
First
gotten
of all, the position that
no way.
he's expected to play isn't even the position that he played for the vast majority of his career. Yeah. The vast majority of his career, he's been a forward or a center.
He's been a 4-5. Like, he's been really a 4 who on those small ball lineups can shift to a 5 because of his lane. To ask him to be a 3 or a wing who's going to create on his own and all that, I'm like,
we haven't really seen that done
at all. I feel really bad.
Here's the question I have to ask, and I don't know, because I don't go to enough of these draft centric events. I go to games,
right?
But I haven't attended the combine in person. I've done it virtually.
Right.
But, Gavoni and maybe the guy from the guy we always make fun of, who's the guy we always make fun of for Bleacher Report or
I'm drawing a blank on his name.
Yeah, well,
you know
who I'm talking about. But I mean, they're always at these events. Ironically, when I did go to an event and they had seats at where Trey Johnson in November or December, when Trey Johnson was playing in Brooklyn for that 4-team event that included, it was Texas Tech, Texas, St. Joe's, and who am I forgetting? No. I'm forgetting a team. Anyway, they had seats there. But they didn't show up. So, they always talking about, well, we go to this game and that game. Well, maybe they're supposed to go to those games, but they're not. That was the one time I actually saw seats for them to be there, and they weren't there. But anyway, point being is I wonder, I know these guys are rubbing elbows with NBA scouts, NBA executives, but to me, it never made sense. If you're Danny Ainge, my favorite Danny Ainge story is when he told was Bill Walton's running mate, Dave Pasch. He told Dave Pasch that the year Tatum came out and the year Fultz came out, he told him privately, quote unquote, privately, that that Fultz was a sure-handed number 1 pick, and if the Celtics had the number 1 pick, they were taking Fultz. Okay, that's what he told Dave Pasch, and so Dave Pasch basically all year would argue with Bill Walton, saying, "I know for a fact that NBA executives think that Markelle Fultz is going to be the number 1 draft pick." No, he was. But the Celtics they got the number 1 pick and they traded it away.
It's all mind games.
And so now I wonder, we've seen Wasserman. Wasserman's the other guy's name. So we've seen these guys, how their draft boards can be very volatile and it seems to be based on what they hear, not what they see with their eyes, or not what they can calculate in analytics, but what people are telling them, which I just don't understand why an NBA executive would turn to Jonathan Givony and say, yeah, we really like this guy. This is a guy we're going to take. Why would you tell anyone that? Why?
You wouldn't. You wouldn't. It's malpractice.
You might not even tell your wife.
Yeah, it would be malpractice. I know, I totally agree that, we see this every year. When we first started doing this, the flavor of the month was Leonard Miller, and how Leonard Miller was a freak athlete who was going to change the game at the 4. And the guy, he's played in, I think, in NBA in 2 years, I think he's played in like 30 NBA games total. So, I don't root against Cedric from the standpoint of like, I'm sure he's a great kid. He was on the show. I wasn't on that interview, but I saw him play. And I think another year would have done him really well, especially if he went to Duke and he could have shown that he could fit. Like his best bet would have been to go to Duke, be that kind of glue-esque role player like a Sion James, and showcase that I can fit a variety of roles, whether it's knocking down open shots, rebounding, defending, and go that route. Because now I think, yeah, he might go that high. Who knows? You never know. Like I feel like in every sport we hear about these like super quick risers who have been kind of plummet when the actual draft comes. So I think there's a reality where this guy doesn't even go in the first round. But it just kind of sucks because this is a guy that was not ready for the NBA, had not shown he was ready, and he's going to go. And I mean, if he does, he's committed. And I mean, at this point, he's got to be hoping that he's a lottery pick to make it financially worth his while. Because if he's not, he might have just burned himself pretty bad in the long run.
Another player on this list that kind of fits that mold is Carter Bryant, but he's like 2-3 years younger.
Yeah.
And, I mean, he played less than 20 minutes per game. He didn't really do much in the first half of the season, played well in the second half of the season, but it wasn't like he was a savior for Arizona that took them out of their doldrums. They didn't advance far in the NCAA tournament. He wasn't a big factor there. And people are saying he's a top 10 player. I don't see it, but if I'm Carter Bryant, here's the thing. If I'm Carter Bryant and I'm hearing all this, I'm for sure staying in the draft.
Oh, 100%.
There's no way I'm leaving. But the question are all these people who are saying he's a top 10 player, are they actually the ones pulling the trigger? Are they actually, are they the ones? So what happens if all these people are saying he's a top 10 player, but in NBA people's minds, he's like, yeah, this guy hasn't really proven anything. I'm not taking him to at least pick 20.
It's a different sport, and it's to the extreme, but it's the Shedeur Sanders example where Mel Kiper was literally pounding the table, having a meltdown about how they weren't taking him. I go, look, Mel, I respect the work you've put in, or Wasserman, whoever it is, I respect the work you put in. You're more plugged in than I am from that standpoint, but the most important people to impress are the GMs, the head coaches, the scouts for those teams, not a guy who's being paid by a third-party website. And it just goes to show, I mean, one of these guys, I would not be surprised if we see Bryant, Richardson, Sorber, Coward, like if one of these guys takes a plummet because they're hearing this stuff and then it just doesn't, it's not meshed in because like you said, front offices aren't telling you their super secret battle plans because they don't need that getting out there.
Right. And I'll be shocked if Richardson's in the top 20.
Yeah, I mean, I saw the highest I saw him go was I think last lottery. I saw him going 13-14 is where like the highest.
Yeah, I don't see it. I see around late 20s, early 30s, and with Queen, we said last week, and I'm still sticking to it. I still have him in the early 20s, but I'm still considering moving him down to the end of the first round. So that's why I have him on this list, and he's definitely not ready for the NBA. He still has to lose more weight. And he's not a young freshman. He's not 18 or 19. He's 20 plus.
He's the prime example. I think all of these guys to a degree, but I think this is just the ripple effect of all those guys pulling out. It's just, I think teams are going to get more and more desperate about like, we need to take somebody with these picks. And I'm not saying that, somebody would take Baker Mazara over Derek Queen, but like with all those guys pulling out, everyone's naturally moving up one or two spots, if not more. So it's like, I can understand like Derek Queen, I think again, is another guy I saw going as high as like 7-8 range. I don't really agree with that, but people might be looking at it like, well, we need a big or we want a big, and there's not really that.
Well, he's also not that big. He's only like 6'9" as opposed to like 7 foot, But
I could just see teams being like, yeah, but like, you can always usually in the draft you always pencil in 4 or 5 second round bigs that you can get that can fill a need. Like you look and go a Lendenborg, a Condon, guys that you're like, oh yeah, I can grab those guys. Maybe tail end of the first, in middle, early second, and get that big. Now it's like, well, those guys are gone. So if I want to get a big, I might not have a choice but to take a Derek Queen, or I might, if I want to fill some of these archetypes, if I want to wing, I might feel pressure to take Cedric Howard because some of the other guys that I thought I might get value on, they're gone or they're not here.
Here's what I think is going to kill Queen. He doesn't have versatility. He has the game of a big. He
Yeah.
doesn't have the legitimate size of a big or the length. He doesn't have a great wingspan.
Yep.
And what are you going to do with him? If Karl Anthony Towns is a problem in the playoffs, what the hell would Derek Queen won't even sniff the building?
He's like all the worst aspects of a tweener. Like that, you really look at him like, yeah, ideally with your size, you'd be able to pop out on the perimeter and play like kind of a hybrid stretch four or but it's like, no, he's like a center. Like collegiately, he was like a center who was playing at the basket at the rim. And now you're going to draft him to defensively, he's going to get chewed up. I don't know. He should have stayed. He's probably the biggest name in the draft that I'm like, I do not see it. You should have stayed in college and just rode that Maryland wave or followed Buzz wherever. And I don't know.
The last player I wanted to talk about on this list in a little more is Thomas Sorber. Sorber was a 4-star, about in the 40s in the recruiting rankings, exceeded expectations, especially, for a freshman. I think he played in Roman Catholic in Philadelphia, so that's a really good school. But Sorber wasn't considered a 5-star, and he played like a 5-star this year. Though he got hurt about halfway through the season. So while he looked really promising, this was a guy you're looking at thinking, okay, next year, this guy's going to be a star. This guy's going to be, all conference, and if he stays another year, maybe all American. And you know what? He stayed in the draft. And he wasn't able to work out the combine because he's still recovering from foot surgery. This is a guy that's not guaranteed to go in the first round. His rookie season, he's probably not going to be in summer league. So that means his rookie season's lost. Really, he's not going to play in the NBA next year. So what the hell? This guy could have been a lottery pick next year. Who's giving this kid advice?
Yeah, this is just where it's like, if you're going to develop, I think that the risk you have is when you go to the NBA and think, I'm going to do my development in the NBA, it's such a gamble because you are consistently going to be overlooked by the next new shiny thing.
Right.
Like, you're consistently there's going to be a new,
and that new shiny thing could be a Cedric Howard too.
Exactly. Like it
doesn't necessarily have to be an 18-year-old.
Yeah. If you go back to college, get healthy, and you already know I can play at this level, and I'm naturally you're going to get better just because you're going to be a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger, and just a little bit more comfortable in a college court. It just sucks because now you're going to go and like the G League is not really a place for development, in my opinion, because you've got grown men a la Drew Timme or trying to get onto an NBA roster. They have no mercy on you. And they're better than you as a pure basketball player.
You have guys in their late 20s, some in their early 30s.
And so that's a really cutthroat place. So you're not going to be the coaches there are all trying to grind and climb. They're putting the best players. It's not really a place to develop. And I'm not in an NBA office, so I can't speak to this, but I'd be really curious how much development and skill work NBA coaching staffs and training staffs are doing with guys. I honestly can't imagine it's that much because it's like, you're a professional. I shouldn't have to teach you the game. You should know the game, whether it's being able to identify, be able to run a play on offense, identify defenses, what to do in situations.
I bet you they make their most gains in the off seasons when they when they work out with, friends of theirs. Some people are friends with Kevin Durant and some are Kyrie Irving. And, totally. I bet you that's when they make their most improvement.
And so it's I just think that if you're on that cusp of potentially breaking out in particular, you're not breaking out in the G League. It's probably not happening for you that way. You're not breaking out into an NBA roster as a late first round, second round pick. Again, there's always an exception to the rules, sure, but that's probably my biggest fear for a guy like Sorber, where it's okay, man, you're betting on yourself, all great, but you're going to be on you're going to miss key development time because of injury, and when you get out there, and you're probably going to be on the G League court,
And you're going to be behind. You're going to be
Yeah.
behind everyone else.
You're already younger than a lot of these guys. You're going to be behind. You're going to be coming off injury, and you're going to be going against guys that mentally are going to try to tear your head off because they're doing whatever they can to step foot on an NBA court. And I'm not saying he's not competitive. I'm not saying he's not fiery, but it's like, okay, when you're against a 28-year-old man who's been in this league for 4 years, fighting and clawing, yeah, guess what? He's probably going to try to terrorize you, and he probably is going to, pretty mercilessly. I mean, but like seriously, like we looked at it, like look at the numbers that guys like Timmy and Baycott were putting up in the G League. I mean, they were just on that, they were dominating, and then they get to the NBA and they're just pieces. Is he ready to go against those types of dudes night in, night out?
Well, look
Probably
at Max McClung. You know, he's a G League All-Star, but he can't get the time of day in the NBA.
Exactly. So I don't know. If you're gonna do development, college is the way to go.
All right. So before we move on in our college notebook, we're going to bring on Cam Reel, who Cam, were you stuck in traffic, or did the girls at the strip club not want you to go home, or what?
Yeah, no, I was stuck in a bottle of sake. Had to drink my way out to make it here. I guess really it was soju, so either way, I'm here.
Was this the last official day of school?
So last official day teaching was Thursday for me, and then today was my last day of work.
And was there a goodbye party for you?
Yeah, I guess in a way. It's like we did a Korean barbecue for lunch, so it was a good time.
Cool. We have a Korean place right by my house. Very yummy.
Oh yeah. It's good fun.
All right. So now we're going to continue in the notebook, and now we're going to talk about an area that we haven't really covered too much and we're seeing a lot more these days, because basically the college players are picked over, and there's still teams like, how am I going to compete? Where am I going to get a player? Where can I find some talent? And so they're starting to bring in these European guys. And the funny part of it is a lot of these guys are 21, 22 years old, and they're actually eligible for the NBA draft this year. In fact, I listed out the top 8, the guys I think are the top 8 additions from Europe going to college this year. 4 of them will be in this year's draft. That is going to be so weird that one of these guys could theoretically, now I don't know if that would be interesting if one of these guys was drafted. Most likely they're all off the too far down. But if one of these guys is drafted, what would happen? Are they allowed to still play college ball? But anyway, but when they do graduate, the 4 of the 8, they won't be in the draft because they're already be in this draft. All right. So who are they? And you'll have to excuse me. I may not get all the pronunciations right, and Cam's already laughing before I even tried one. First one, number 1. These are in order of how I would rank these guys. But I would say all of them on some level. Well, I'd say at least the top 5 are NBA prospects. I think the top 3 are serious NBA prospects. But even the bottom 3, if they weren't in this draft, might get some traction. But unfortunately, they're too old to not be in this draft. All right, so here we go. We have, I'm going to say Andrija Jelovic. He's a small forward going to Kentucky. Again, I think he has the potential to be a first-round pick. He's 21 years old, though. He's coming from the Adriatic League with their the KK Mega is just the place to be in Eastern Europe for development. Mega is just the team where it's kind of like Overtime Elite of Europe, or G League Ignite of Europe, if you will. All right, then we have Johan Grunlow. I would say he is a center who can shoot it. He's going to Virginia. Has not got a lot of traction. He played for Rostov in Germany, and this kid can play. I've been very high on him. I think you're going to hear a lot about this kid in the coming season. The next one, and this came right after Tyrese Proctor was saying he was staying in the draft. Well, here comes his replacement. Dame Sarr, a combo guard who played in Spain for Barca. He's only 19, so he'll probably have 4 years of eligibility, but probably won't stay that long. I don't think, might not be a one and done, but he might be a one and done. But he's going to Duke. Then we have Elias Camardine, is a combo guard who played in France in the French league for Dijon. He is scheduled to go to Ole Miss, but he's almost 22 years old, and he is one of those guys that is eligible for this draft. We have Filip Jovic, forward, who is going to Auburn. He's 20. He's coming from KK Mega. Then we have Sandro Frew, who is a classic big man. He might remind me of who's the big guy who backs up Franz in
For the German team?
Batazze.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Now Frew can't shoot it as well, but he is a very good foul shooter and does make a three now and then. I think he could be, maybe down the road he works his way onto an NBA roster, but he's almost 22, going to Louisville, coming from the German league, and he will be in this draft. And I'm sure NBA teams are taking a peek at him right now just to see if there's any upside for him to be a late second rounder. I doubt it. He would make it up that far up the draft board. Then we have Mihajlo Petrovic. Great name, basketball name, but not related to the famous Petrovic who played for the Nets. And he's a point guard. He's going to Illinois. He's 22. He comes from KK Mega, and he too is eligible for the draft. This kid for KK Mega this year, not a great shooter, but a pretty good defender, and he averaged in, about 25 minutes a game. You ready? He averaged over 7 assists per game. Kid can pass. And then lastly, coming from the Greek league, we have Latiris Mantazokas. He's a forward going to Oklahoma State, also nearly 22, and highly rated when he was highly regarded when he first came onto the scene, like at 17, 18, 19, kind of slipped a little because his production hasn't been stellar, but it's been good. And I think he'll be a very solid player for Oklahoma State. Probably a starter and maybe a good one. All right. So now we're going to move on to other roster moves. And there's still, people are just tying up the loose ends. And most of the, good players left on the table in the portal are getting snatched up now. The biggest signing since we were last on the air is Tyon Grant Foster, went to Gonzaga. Kanan Carlisle went to Florida Atlantic. Pop Isaacs, because Milos Uzon came back to Houston, Pop Isaacs flipped his commitment from Houston to Texas A&M. Marquise Pashmore, a four-star from Kansas who didn't get a ton of playing time last year, is going to Maryland. Nate Johnson, who was Akron's leading scorer last year on their impressive run to the NCAA tournament, he's going to Kansas State. Van Allen Lubin joins a boatload of new players going to NC State, going from North Carolina to NC State. And lastly, Cade Tyson, who basically was wasted at North Carolina, he is going to Minnesota, where he will most likely be immediately penciled into the starting lineup and could be a sleeper to put up big points for the Gophers this year. Gentlemen, you have any comments about our Euro guys going to their schools and or these transfers going to new schools? Drew?
Yeah, I haven't seen, outside of Dame and Jovic, are the only two international guys on this list that I've actually seen play at all. So nothing. I mean, I know Dame's a big one. He was. I mean, he's being viewed as a five. He's being ranked as an American 5-star. So he's kind of was always a big name, and he's going to Duke. I mean, obviously, Tom Grant Foster's a Zag. Exciting stuff. We needed a replacement for Battle. He comes in. I think the thing I'm most excited about is last year he was definitely not healthy. All the people I've talked to some people that are close to the Gonzaga system saying that, he was not healthy for pretty much the first half of the year. And if you go to the back half, he really picked it up and looked like the player of the year that he was. His defensive versatility, along with guys like Emmanuel Innocente, Jalen Warley coming in.
Yeah, he'll give you much more defense than Battle.
Yeah, I'm very excited about his versatility. He might not be the raw like downhill. He's definitely not the same free throw shooter, and he might not be that raw downhill attack mode always, but give me a guy that can kind of fit a variety of roles. I think their defensive versatility will be much better this year. Speaking of international guys, I'm very confident. I don't know if you've heard of this kid, Rich, but Mario Saint Supre coming out of it sounds like he's all
right?
but what's that?
He's from France, right?
He's from France, but he's playing in Spain. He was playing for one of the ACB teams.
Okay.
He took Santiago Vescovi's starting job, actually, and he, by all accounts, sources that I have, not that I'm super plugged in, I want to give a shout out to the House of Kraus podcast guys for letting me chat it up. He is, I think, all but signed, sealed, and delivered to Gonzaga, so that should be kind of an exciting little pickup for him. He should compete for some minutes in the backcourt. Cannon Carlisle is one where, like, Rich, we've talked about this kid so much over the last couple of years, from not the promise at Stanford that wasn't realized to a disappointing Indiana kind of just team in general.
Yeah, he was misused.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's just,
he needs the ball in his hands, which is a weakness.
Sure.
Which is a weakness in
100%.
any ball player. If you can't play without the ball in your hands, you better change that.
Yeah.
But in this case, he's still only 19, 20
years old, I think.
Yeah, probably 20. But yeah, if they put the ball in his hands, they'll probably have a dynamic score.
No, I just think, like, I think finally it clicked where it's like, maybe, hey man, the mid-major route is probably the way to go, where teams will be a little bit more deferential to you. You'll be able to kind of assert yourself and your pedigree a little bit more than when you play at these, particularly like in Indiana, when you play at these Power Fives where they're constantly bringing guys in. You have to learn how to. It's very hard to be the guy at that level. Where an FAU, I think he can go in and at a minimum have the ball in his hands more. And then Van Allen Lubin is just funny because I'm pretty sure he tweeted out when he was like locked in and was going to be going to, if he didn't get drafted or whatever, he was going back to North Carolina, and then he ends up at NC State. So that's just a transfer portal. Like, there he is. It's just the new era is where you got kids tweeting out, "I'm loyal to the soil. This is home." 2 days later, they're going to in like an in-state rival. So there's that. And then I agree with you. Cade Tyson is a name that I'm very excited to see get a chance, because he went from averaging almost 17 at Belmont, basically non-existent, unused, kind of onto the backroom trash heap.
He's a big wing, who can shoot.
Yeah.
Really good shooter. I think he's going to have a bounce back year.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident penciling him in as a double-digit scorer with some really solid shooting numbers from behind the arc. I think he's due for a resurgence for sure.
Yeah, I'd be shocked if he didn't at least average 14.
Yeah, and shoot at a pretty good clip from deep.
Yeah. Cam, have any comments on these guys?
No, I'm just excited to generally see more European talent coming over to college basketball. I think it's just going to elevate the level of play in a totally different level. I mean, you got teams like Illinois that are virtually all European prospects. That's
some schools are becoming masters at this. And Arizona, Gonzaga have always been there. They were probably the first. Gonzaga was probably the first team to do it. Yeah, and then that transferred over to Arizona with the coaching change, but Illinois has become one of the leaders. And I talked to their SID, middle of the season. I was talking about what's going to happen at the end of the season and so forth. Said right after the season, coaches hop on a plane and go to Europe. That's what he said. We're going to hop on a plane and go to Europe. All right. So the last topic in our college notebook before we move on to the NBA is the NCAA wants to expand March Madness. Drew, you're shaking your head no. And I'm thinking No. So what are your thoughts here?
You can bleep me out here. This is dumb as shit. Uh, don't touch the tournament. It's great. I'm getting really sick and tired of this notion, and some people attribute it to the SEC, which, side note, got absolutely waxed in the baseball national tournament, despite getting again a record number of teams in. Just in general, I'm all for
Part of the proposal is to perhaps have automatic qualifiers from the big conferences, like not just one, but multiple.
Multiple. I just basketball in particular, what makes it so great is the Cinderellas. And I know people are going to talk about, well, there weren't any Cinderellas this year and all that, or there really weren't any. And I'm like, that's fine. But I would rather see a Colorado State led by Neat Clifford win a game or two than go see. You can't tell me that, Georgia, who got 30 smacked by Gonzaga in the first round because they beat Florida once, and I think they might have beat Alabama.
Yeah, that's what got him in, really.
Yeah, but you can't tell me that one win in a sport that is known for parity, that is known for it's sports. Any given Sunday, right? It can happen.
Right.
You can't tell me that team was more deserving than a handful of other teams. That is just super frustrating to me that we're still having this conversation, because it's not going to be. They're going to try to pitch as expansion, so more good teams, and the bubble is less brutal and less teams feel skewed by the bubble. That's not what's going to happen. What's going to happen is it's going to be 15 SEC teams get in and 13 Big Ten teams get in, and the Mountain West, the Big Sky, the WCC, the WAC, they're going to get
Missouri Valley, the Atlantic 10.
Yeah, and it's like that's not what I want. I don't want to watch Georgia get manhandled by Gonzaga so the SEC can feel good about itself, so the bubble isn't as harsh. It's just super frustrating to me. It's like, if you could tell me, promise me, guarantee me that we're going to expand it, but it's going to be holistic expansion and everyone's going to get a fair shot. We're taking the best teams. I might be a little bit more like, okay, give me a couple extra March Madness games. I think there's worse things in life, but I know that's not going to happen.
I have a better alternative, but we'll get to that in a second.
But yeah, so I just think this is it sucks. It sucks. I think it's a horrible idea, because you can't tell me that there's realistically, we get 68 teams in. You cannot tell me, for the most part, that there's 78 teams that deserve to be on this stage, because you could argue there's not even 68 teams that deserve to be on this stage.
Right.
So adding 10 more is going to make it better? No, it's not. It's going to dilute the product. We already saw that favoritism. We saw with not NC State, UNC getting in, and you're going, really? And sure, they won the game, but I don't know.
Do you realize that 1 out of every 6 Division I teams get in the NCAA tournament?
Yeah.
1 out of every 6.
Yeah. And you could already argue it's overinflated. What are we doing?
It's not that hard to get into the tournament. And when you get down to teams 68, 69, 70, they're not very good.
No, not at all. Teams 50 aren't very good. Like I said, we watched, how many teams did we watch get? Gonzaga was an 8 seed and beat Georgia by 30 with an NBA lottery pick on their roster. I'm using them because
the whole reason people might say, well, why even have those teams in? Here's the thing. When you run the gauntlet, all right, it's like you said, any given Sunday, right? Yeah. Or in this case, maybe any given Saturday. But when you run the gauntlet, you have to be good enough to beat a team when you're not at your best.
100%.
And if you're good enough to win 6 games in a row against decent to very good teams, maybe even excellent teams, then you deserve the national championship.
100%. 100%.
And so that's why we have those other teams in there. And it also allows the little guys to compete. That's the whole idea. Let the little guys have their chance. And every once in a while, one of those little guys makes it all the way to the Final Four, and everybody's happy. Everyone's ecstatic.
100%. Yeah, it's to me, it's a mind boggler. It's not a mind boggler. It's money and it's conference prestige and all that. But I'm just getting to a point where it's like, okay, power conferences, like, I'm sure Missouri probably was sitting there going, we got Drake, and the whole world was like thrilled when Missouri lost to Drake, thrilled. And it was an eye opener and a reminder that, like, it's not the name on the front, it's the coaching, it's the execution, and there's a little bit of magic that goes into it. And you're diluting that even further because you're going to pinch out these other guys. And, like, are we going to start having bye weeks in the tournament? Are we going to go, you're a 1 seed, you get a first round bye so these other teams can fill those games and play? Like, is that, like, what are we doing? Like it's no, it's dumb. It's stupid. I'm with John Rothstein. John, if you ever hear this, I'm with you. I will storm whatever building. I will go to whatever protest you want. Sign me up because this cannot happen. This is
And
so stupid.
I'll follow you both.
Yeah.
Even though I'm very jealous of Rothstein's hair, so I may miss his hair the same day. But Cam, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, whatever Army Greaves we need to buy for this anti-expansion campaign, I'm in, man. Suit me up. Yeah, I just think I think it's two other like perspectives on it. I think one, you just continue to dilute the best team's ability to make it deeper into the
Yeah.
tournament as well.
Yeah.
Like I think, this past Final Four was awesome. Because those games, like you just had such talented teams, and they were so clearly the four most talented teams.
Indeed.
And I think when you add extra rounds, when you add, additional competition, I think it just makes it harder for the tournament to actually like level out in the end and still be entertaining. But then too, I think like when you expand this tournament more from where it is, like you said, like so many teams are already in it anyway. I feel like, like the committee might think that might increase the odds of more upsets, but I think it does the opposite.
No,
I think
it would definitely do the opposite.
yeah, because you end up changing those matchups so much
Yeah.
just by the addition of these extra teams that you don't even really end up with actual like, even matchups that have the potential for upsets. You just have a bunch of teams of like a similar level playing each other. And ultimately probably not even that high of a level either. So I just think like for the watchability, like I don't want to watch that. I already can't watch all the games. It's virtually impossible to watch all the games, unless you're like paid to do it or you're scouting, right? Yeah, exactly.
I watch every single game.
Yeah, I mean, and
until they
like
get,
all
unless they
encompassing.
turn into 25-point blowouts, then
Yeah.
but
Yeah, for sure.
here's the thing. Did anybody watch that tournament that Fox created? Now, I believe there was some financial incentive at some level. It wasn't huge, but there was some financial incentive. So they had a 16-team tournament. All the teams showed up in Vegas. It was like a bubble affair.
Are you talking about the Players era?
Yeah. Or no. This was at the end of the season, so they didn't start it.
That's right. The end of your tournament, not the.
No, it wasn't the Players era. That was an in-season tournament. This was like to compete with the NIT. Difference is the NIT and the NCAA both started right after the regular season, mid-March. This started at the end of March as like Final Four week. It started. Okay, I'm going to tell you that it was the worst viewing experience. I couldn't watch it, and I'll tell you why. This is hilarious. And I swear to God, ESPN hired somebody to do this because Fox and obviously ESPN are now kind of in a war for sports. During the games, every game, there was some, I don't know if it was a man or a woman, who had this screeching scream. And every time somebody got at the foul line, didn't matter what team, when the whole place was quiet. Now, first of all, there was only maybe like 100 people there at the games, not counting the teams and players. Okay. But anytime somebody got the foul line, the announcers would be talking, and this person would just let it rip. And the sound went right through your ears and made your brain hurt. Okay. And it was ridiculous. The games were so quiet, you could hear a pin drop unless this person was screaming. Nobody was at these games. Nobody cared. I stopped watching because I couldn't stand the screamer. The only thing I could have done was turn the sound down. I didn't think of that. I don't know why. But they were horrible. Here's the other thing. Nobody played in those games. So the financial incentive, I think there was some, but whatever financial incentive they gave them wasn't enough to keep most big players for those teams. Now, we're talking teams like, I don't know, Minnesota and Stanford and teams like Kansas State and a lot of the big players didn't play in those games. So my suggestion is let's get back to the NIT. Now the problem is Fox and ESPN. ESPN owns the NIT, and Fox owns this new horrible thing. Okay, this new torture chamber thing. I suggest that maybe they have a decent NIT and have financial incentive enough to make sure that the players at least give a second thought to not playing. But you don't want too much financial incentive because you don't want teams tanking to get into the new lucrative NIT and not play in the NCAA. You wouldn't want that. So, but enough to make them say, hey, it's worthwhile to get out there, and also teams will get a chance to watch. I can't imagine being a scout there in Vegas and having that screamer next to me. I would have killed him or her.
Yeah, I'll just leave it at this. If you want to try to sell people, watch more games and you get more games, join us real sickos and watch San Jose State play Fresno on a Saturday night, and you'll get the games that you want. Because that's basically what you're asking for, is you're gonna have the Fresno States and the San Jose States of the world beating each other up. Just join us, be a sicko and a degenerate, and stay up for you East Coast guys, stay up super late and watch the game at like 11 p.m. like a regular college basketball fan. You don't need that in the tournament, because then all we're going to do is talk about, I can already see it happening now. I'm just vision boarding it. Here it comes. San Jose State's going to play Eastern Washington in the new March Madness tournament, and it's going to be an awful game, and all we're going to hear is how bad college basketball is, how the NBA is so much better, and these guys aren't skilled. We're all going to be sitting here saying, we told you this. Neither of these teams should have been here, but because you have a 130-team tournament now, this is what you get stuck with. So screw them all. They're wrong. This is a bad idea. Leave it as it is.
I mean, also, like, what would they have to change the name to, like, the March, April, June
Yeah.
tournament madness
March Madness
creation? Like,
yeah, like
dude,
yeah, that is
it's
just dumb.
absurd. Like, it takes a full month for the tournament to wrap up. Like, how long do we need to play playoff basketball?
Yeah, it does. Well, it's almost 4 weeks. Yeah. Almost 4 weeks. If you consider the lead up and you consider the play in, yeah.
Now something I could get behind, expand the regular season, keep the tournament the same. I could do that.
Yeah. I mean, obviously we know money is driving this.
Right, of course.
Yeah, 1,000%.
Hey,
So-
I'll take like a second feast week, like give me feast week, and then give me like another tournament week later in the season, maybe, or something.
I wouldn't mind starting. I wouldn't mind starting March Madness more toward the end of March.
Yeah.
I would love to see, some of these teams that have, especially now in these conferences where they don't have a balanced schedule. I'd like to see, where there was a more balanced schedule.
Give me more competitive non-cons in January and February. I mean,
oh yeah,
I really enjoyed.
They used to have those bracket buster
yes.
games.
I really enjoyed when Gonzaga and Kentucky set their schedule up 2 years ago, and Kentucky and Gonzaga played in like middle of February. It was great for the sport. As a Gonzaga fan, yeah, it was fun to watch. We won, but like it was great for the sport because it gave people a reason to tune into it, watch teams they might not have seen, two teams that don't see. Like that was awesome. Give me Tennessee versus UCLA in the middle of freaking February. I am signed on watching that. Instead,
but also, a lot of these teams what they used to do is they were open-ended games. So they would take these teams that were literally on the bubble, not literally, but you know what I mean. I mean, they analyzed the bracket and saw what teams may have to win their conference tournament. So they scheduled games so that they could get another quality win by playing each other. I would love to see more of that. Yeah, that would be cool if we had like a week where we had like bracket buster games.
Yeah, that'd be
all
awesome.
over the country. Where
that'd be so cool.
Where teams like a Georgia plays like an Akron, or or something like that. And now Georgia might say, well, what advantage? Georgia wouldn't want to play that game because all they could do is be hurt by it. So you might not be able to get that game, but you certainly could get an Akron against a St. Joe's.
I would love to see Boise State go play Dayton.
Right. Exactly. Cool. Yeah, that'd be really cool.
I'd be really
like an NCAA game. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be super cool. I'd love to see like these West Coast teams go play. I'd love to see Grand Canyon fly out and go play St. Joe's or go play Belmont or something. That'd be fun.
Yeah.
They'd be
basically give these teams a chance to get a quad one win.
Yeah. Because that's a whole other argument. I'm so tired of people like running and hiding from like the Akrons, from the Drakes, because nobody wants to play them, the Indiana States, because nobody wants to play them, because the guys who know basketball know that's a dangerous game, so they don't want to deal with them. And then they get cut at tournament time and go, we didn't play any quad one games. Well, yeah, because they didn't want to play us.
Oh, by the way, the commissioner, when he brought this whole expansion idea up, one of the things he mentioned was Indiana State being left out of the tournament. I'm like, what? Whose
That was
fault
your
is that?
fault. That's your fault. That's your own fault. Why is that? Oh yeah, Indiana State got screwed by you.
Your fucking fault. Why are you bringing that up as a reason to change?
It's literally the meme where he's shooting the guy, going, "Why would you do that?" Like, you have the smoking gun in your hand. You shot Indiana State in the head and said, "Oh my God, why would Indiana State do that?"
I couldn't believe he had the nerve to bring out the words Indiana State came out of his mouth. All right, we're going to move on to the NBA draft stock report. Gentlemen, I'm going to list off, say, the top 20 players. This is my board. It is in flux. There's still more scouting to do, especially on the international side. A lot of these guys, international guys, are still playing ball. Imagine that. Also, we still haven't done our analytics. I'm not going to get into the details there, but trust me, getting basketball analytics, unless you're very wealthy, work for an NBA team or work for ESPN, it's not easy. So we're still working out the kinks there. But that's why the draft board's not up, for that reason. Not to mention the fact that all the health issues that have gone on in the Harris household lately. But anyway, we're just still trying to play catch up from last year. But all right, so here's the top 20 on my board. And then we'll have the guys comment. I actually have the top 60 listed, but I'm not going to go through all that. But here in order: Cooper Flagg, number 1; Dylan Harper, number 2; Ace Bailey, number 3; number 4, VJ Edgecombe, number 5; Trey Johnson, number 6; Noah Nsangwe, number 7; Asa Noel, number 8; Con Knipple, number 9; Igor Demon, number 10; Kaspers Yakashonis, number 11; Jeremiah Fears, number 12; Colin Murray Boyles, number 13; Nolan Traore, number 14; Kaman Malawach, number 15; Liam McNeely, number 16; Walter Clayton, number 17; Neek Clifford, number 18; Drake Powell, number 19; Derek Queen, who I've said I may drop, and number 20, Will Riley, who's just ahead of Carter Bryant. And I actually, consider those guys very much on a similar level. So, Drew, looking over this list, again, I have not really taken much note of anybody else's draft board, though I do hear things now and again. And so I don't know how this stacks up against what others are saying. But what are your thoughts? Any surprises? Any people you would move up, move down?
No, I mean, I think this is pretty dialed. A small one in the top 5. I like Trey Johnson more than VJ. I think it's a little bit more athletic upside, kind of polished, but I think 4 and 5 is, I would just swap them. I have no issues.
I would say Trey Johnson has more skill.
Yeah.
VJ Edgecombe has more potential.
Right. Yeah, I think for me, I don't have any major. I think the top 5 those are my 5 players, and I think the order is pretty locked in. I love the Walter Clayton and Neek Clifford respect, both in the top 20. I'm really high on Neek. I could be even convinced into him moving up above Walter, McNeely, and Malawach. I just think he is such. I could see him being the last pick of the lottery. I just think his versatility. Again, it's not a 1-to-1 player comparison, but I just see he can fit into those Draymond Green-esque Swiss Army roles. I'm not saying he's the same player, but just, is he going to be a 20-point per game scorer? Probably not. But I could see very easily him being an 11-point per game, 5 boards, 4 assists, and then average a block and a steal a game kind of role. I love Neek's game. I love seeing Walter Clayton, moved up. I know obviously his name carried a lot of weight through the tournament, but I think a lot of people still had him lower. I go, just in terms of shot maker and just the ability to put the ball in his hand and get a bucket, there probably isn't a guy better in the country this year, arguably. I mean, there's a handful, but in terms of just polished scoring, so love that. And I like seeing, at the rounding out, I'll just do the top 25 because we'll just do the first sheet. Seeing a guy like Rasheer Fleming and Danny Wolf creep up there, kind of these skilled forward bigs, kind of hybrid guys. Is A, just a reminder of how deep college basketball is, and B, it's kind of crazy to see that you have like a Danny Wolf who's a 7-footer, but really is a point guard esque skill set. So I have no major complaints. I totally agree with you on Derek Queen, which would probably be one that catches people off guard. Malawatch is another one. I think the raw potential, you have to have him in that lottery 14 range, but I think you have him in a perfect spot. He's another guy that I was hearing rumors of him going as high as 3.
I was higher on him
Yeah.
earlier in the season.
Me as well. When we looked at that coming out of an Olympic international year, there was a lot of good things we saw, but then you get to the college level, and I mean, he was really kind of a glorified role player who got played out of a lot of games, but the potential is there. The shooting stroke looks good, but he didn't showcase it as a viable weapon. The size, athleticism, but there were still moments where like he wasn't a great rebounder, which was disappointing. He wasn't. There was things that disappointed me as much as they excited me. But yeah, I don't have any major issues. One guy that I do really like, Jeremiah Fears. He's a guy that I could see even bumping up. I mean that 9, 10, 11 spot, all three of those guys I view pretty evenly. I'm a little bit partial to Fears, but I think no complaints. And then I guess the one guy that I'm skeptical about as a top 10 guy is Khan. Not because I don't think he's a super polished and skilled player. I just athleticism always worries me when you get to the NBA.
Yeah, we didn't see him get tested at the combine because he was hurt.
Exactly. It's as much of a who can you defend game as well as how good you can be on offense. Like, do I think Khan has all the makings of a guy who can be a really polished offensive weapon? Could he fill a variety of roles as like a secondary shot maker, a catch and shoot guy? I totally see that, but can you target him consistently in today's, I mean, all the NBA is nowadays is high pick and roll, matchup hunting kind of offense. And I think the moment Khan steps on the court, I'm circling him with a red marker until he proves me otherwise, because we didn't see the athletic testing. So, I have no major complaints. I really like the top 25 we have here for the most part. I think there's some minor movements, but I think the top 25 players are pretty set.
Cam, you have any thoughts?
I like that you have a Senge as high as you do, Noah Senge. I did my scouting report, beginnings of it today for him, and definitely see him as a guy that could, I don't know if he could surpass Trey Johnson or Edgecombe. I think it's not out of the realm of possibility, because I think he just has those raw athletic tools that are so rare. The way he moves on the court, it's got a great feel for the game.
And he's one of the youngest guys in this draft.
Yeah, he's like 3 days older than Cooper Flagg, I think. It was like actually kind of absurd that he's that young, and getting major minutes.
And putting up really good numbers at a high level.
Yeah, that's huge. And Bundesliga is very good.
And they're still in the playoffs, by the way.
Yeah,
for the second straight year, they made it to the championship for the first time ever, I believe, last year or the year before. Because this team is kind of like the overtime elite or G League Ignite of Germany, where it attracts all the young stars. And
Yeah, and he didn't really play much at all last season. I think he was like 7 minutes a game, somewhere in there, and popped all the way up to now I think 22 minutes. So like very rapidly improving player. I like to see him up there. I'm a big Igor Demin guy. I think he's kind of a guy as well that there's a little bit more potential there than I think people have probably rated him as.
Oh, I love his upside.
Throughout the college season. Yeah, I think he's awesome. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Franz Wagner, where it's like, everybody kind of agrees he's good and he's got NBA potential. Maybe could possibly grow into, a solid role player, which I feel
got a little Luka in him too.
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of where people felt about Franz Wagner. I think he proved to be better than sort of his pre-draft, expectations. So I think Demin could really I kind of like to see him go, maybe even ahead of like Asa Newell or Con Knippel. Maybe that 7 range would be a good spot for him. Love Colin Murray Boyles. Love that he's in your lottery. Um, Also love Malwatch. I know, he's extremely raw, but I think the potential is there. I think 14 might be a little bit late for him, but I think on a board, when you have so many other guys that have potential, why take the risk? I think, if this were a mock draft, he'd probably go higher. But I think that's a good spot for him realistically for a board. So I think, yeah, I don't really have any critiques, honestly.
All righty. There are some guys at the end, at the end of this top 60 that I think may move out, but worth noting right now that we have them in draft consideration. One is a friend of the show, Peyton Sanford, who was on preseason this year. He is out until about next fall with a shoulder injury that he had operated on. Coleman Hawkins, friend of the show. We got him in the mid-50s, Caleb Love in the mid-50s, Norchad Omir, number 59, Ryan Nebhard, and number 60, friend of the show, Max Sugar. That just goes to show, if you show up on the show, you'll at least get serious draft consideration here. So yeah, and they're not there because of that. I mean, almost all of these guys had great college careers. Actually, they all did. Some had ups and downs, Coleman Hawkins and Caleb Love, but when their ups were high, so Ryan Nebhard, the main reason why I might move him down is the only reason I might move him down is his size. But right now I have him as at number 59, which theoretically would be the last pick of the draft. Drew, you've seen Ryan Nebhard probably more than his father. What are your comments about him being at number 59?
Yeah, I think that's what I would say those last 10 spots, 50 to 60, we'll just say, I think that's a place, if I'm drafting, that I would reserve for the Ormiers, the Love, the Nemhards in general, as a place where you're playing with complete house money. You're taking guys that were, all of these guys, particularly the college ones, were very to extremely productive in college. And so I think he's like one of those guys where you see what his brother's doing. Now, they're obviously very different players because of the physical profile, but I think it's the same argument I made for Timmy a couple years ago, being the last. I took him as the last pick in our mock draft. I remember, I think Cam and I were on that show together. And I'm like, how do you kind of just, you don't lose anything. You get a guy who's pro made in the sense that he's played in a pro style offense with other pros, who has a brother who's a professional. This kid will be on the Canadian national team at some point in a reserve capacity, but will be on the Canadian national team at some point. And he comes pre-built with what I believe is a gift, his ability to pass out of the pick and roll, which is the NBA thing. Do I think Ryan Nemhard is an NBA player? My heart says no, or my head says no. He's too small. He's a solid shooter, but he's not elite. He's really quick with the ball, but he doesn't have the vertical pop that you would need to survive, night in and night out. But I'm drafting him from the standpoint alone of maybe that's wrong. Maybe he defies those odds physically. And B, at a minimum, this is a guy that if he's in my program, I want in my program. I want him helping run practice with his ability to facilitate. I want him on a G League roster where he will thrive because he'll be playing basically against college guys, and he's shown that ability. I mean, he dominated the scrimmages as a passer and was taking games over with his playmaking. And for the people that I had arguing with me online saying, oh, once he's out of Gonzaga, he doesn't have that system, how good is he going to be? Well, he played with a bunch of dudes he has no familiarity with in the combine, was great. So
and also it was good. It was also very good at Florida.
Creighton, Ryan. I was talking about
Creighton.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I was like,
I confused him with his brother.
Yeah, exactly. So, all of these guys, I look at the same thing. I look at a Caleb Love. Look, we know what he is. He's got his warts, and they're pretty nasty and gnarly. But Caleb Love deserves to be drafted for what he's done for the game of basketball collegiately. I'd love to hear his name called for the ups and downs. And B, if and when he most likely doesn't work out, you spent the 57th pick on a guy that if maybe somehow it clicks and it works, you might have just found a guy who can average 16 points a game off your bench.
Yeah.
And
It might be another Malik Beasley or something like that.
Exactly. Like, you don't think Norchad Omir, who was one of the best rebounders in college basketball for years, helped lead multiple teams to Elite Eights and then a Final Four. Like, They're going to tell me that guy, you don't want that guy in your system in some capacity. Like at a minimum, these spots are reserved for guys if I'm drafting that are going to help my program as a whole, as practice players, developmental guys, guys who are going to help usher in young guys, challenge starters. So yeah,
here's a question: if North Chatham right now, you had same players on both teams, and one team's center was North Chatham and the other team's center was Derek Queen, who wins that matchup between O'Meara and Queen?
I think North Chatham, I won't say dominates him, but I think North Chatham gives Queen a lot of problems.
Yeah, agreed.
I think a lot of problems. If North Chatham was a sophomore right now, if he wasn't, was he a fifth year senior? We'd probably be having a different conversation.
24. So. He's almost 24.
Yeah, so it's like that obviously changes things, but
that kills his draft stock.
Kills his draft stock. So, I think we see it. I think out of these bottom 10 guys, Nicholas is a guy that I got pretty familiar with because he was a Gonzaga target for a while. I think that kid can play. I think he's got some sneaky upside. I actually heard he might be try to come collegiately. I heard Virginia Tech was really high on him, which I think would be interesting. But yeah, I can wax on about these college guys because these guys have been a big part of my life the last 4 or 5 years watching them. So I want to see their names called, particularly Nemhard. But, these are house money guys. You're probably not beholden to them more than a year or two. And if they work, you look like a genius. And then you can go be a GM for the next decade off of a pick you made. I mean, that's, so.
Right. No. You basically, it's like you said, you got house money and you got nothing to lose and everything to gain by making a beautiful pick here.
For what it's worth, we know these guys can play basketball.
We know, right?
Yeah, we're not taking some random, French kid who started playing basketball a year ago because he's tall and long. We're taking guys that we know can play at the highest level,
right?
Relative.
So it seems like it used to be in years past. And Cam, I want you to comment on this. It used to be in years past. I don't know, and I think it stopped like maybe 2-3 years ago. People always would use these picks for draft and stash. Now, I don't know if it has been that the European talent hasn't quite been there or the European talent's moving to college before it moves over, so you don't have that draft and stash ability anymore. Though you do, theoretically. You have that with anybody. I mean, you could draft Ryan Nebhard. He could go play for Real Madrid, and you could use him as a draft and stash. But that never happens. But now what they seem to be doing with these last few picks, the last 5 to 10 picks, is taking guys like this, proven guys that they want to try to. And you've seen this with the Knicks and other teams where their bench is terrible, and they're just hoping they can hit with Colin Gillespie or Tyler Kolek or something like that. Somebody they can plug in right away. Denver's tried to do this.
Yeah.
But Cam, what are your thoughts?
Denver might not be the best example, but I think there was a stretch there where teams were doing this, draft and stash strategy like incessantly. And so many times the guy would just never come over. I think it's hard with draft.
But that's more of a case as they weren't asked to come over or their buyout was expensive.
Yeah, I think too, you kind of run into the balance of like, if you take a guy pretty late as a stash and then they start to pop off in Europe or wherever it is they're playing, they can end up demanding more money to continue to play in Europe with their successful team.
As opposed to the NBA where they're locked into a certain contract.
Yeah, you're locked into that rookie scale deal. And for a lot of guys, like realistically, whether that's talent level, whether that's, style of play, they're just better off. I think of like a guy like Milos Teodosic. Like Teodosic definitely got drafted. Somebody was holding his rights for years, and he didn't come over until he was in his 30s. So, like, realistically with those draft and stash players, you can get pretty lucky. In a way, like you could even argue, a guy like Jokic was a draft and stash pick. He ended up coming over right away, but like, I think you're taking on a little bit more of a risk as far as like your investment never coming through. versus like with a college player like Caleb Love, for example, you get an immediate return in terms of like you get that bench spot, but you're not taking I think you're maybe giving away some future potential for that instant gratification of like having this possible bench role player. Which I think, is what Denver was going for when they drafted guys like their previous 3 years.
Hunter Tyson, Pickett.
Yeah, Hunter Tyson. Pickett's a perfect example. But yeah, I think jury's still out. I think, there's so much European talent right now, especially a lot of young talent. Like, yeah, I think this year, especially, I kind of feel like we're going to see the swing the other direction. Like, does somebody, instead of, pulling your pick on Omir, would you rather, throw a shot at one of these college guys that's actually coming over to college? These European guys that are coming over to college, like,
Isn't that going to be funny though? They're going to have draft. You could theoretically have a draft and stash who's playing in college.
yeah. And with like a guy like Dame Sar, I wouldn't be shocked if somebody, threw their
Sar's not in the draft, but
I know, but like say like just as an example,
right.
Because it's going to become more and more common that those guys are coming over and playing college ball, and I don't know. I mean, you wait a year and they end up being a late lottery pick. Why would I not take the swing now? I don't know. Curious to see where things go in the next year or two with draft and stash guys, especially.
I think you're going to see some things that we've never seen before. All right, so that will close up our NBA stock report, and we're going to move on to our NBA notebook. And number one topic is the big news of the day. The Knicks dismiss Tom Thibodeau. Now, this is a team that has on an upward trajectory. They've improved every year under Thibs. They made the conference finals for the first time in a quarter of a century. And they fired a coach. Kim, what's going on?
Who the hell are they hiring?
Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Because what? I mean, what? You're going to go hire Mike Malone? He has some of the same exact flaws that Thibodeau does.
That's the only name I could think of. But
That's it's literally the only guy. Unless they're going to go hire some like no name from
Patino.
college, but like
Patino.
Yeah, like God, that would be hilarious. That's like honestly kind of the perfect Patino team. He doesn't have to play any bench players either. It's
because they don't have any bench players.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't get it, man. I think they surpassed every expectation, frankly, for that team.
Well, I
Especially
had them in the conference finals, but that's where it ended for me. So to me, they achieved what I expected them to achieve.
Yeah. I think like, this is just like classic, Knicks fans getting overexcited for a team that's really good, but isn't really a championship caliber team. I think they're very close. I think they, if you rerun that series, they could probably beat Indiana 3 out of 5 times even.
Yeah.
But they just ran into the hottest team in the league outside of OKC, and that's what happened. They lost. Oh well. I don't see any reason to not run it back with Thibodeau.
I agree.
The players respect him. I would even say like enjoy him, which is saying a lot for Thibodeau because he's a pretty his primary like personality trait is being a pain in the ass, but nah, man, I just think it's unless they have somebody just excellent lined up, I think it's a huge mistake.
I agree. I was shocked, and I don't know what they're going to do. This is a team of veterans who really seem to like him. I just don't. You achieved mainly what most reasonable people expected, and you're on an upward trajectory. So, to me, if that team had a little deeper bench, they might be the team in the NBA Finals. So I think Thibs gets criticized, but who the hell is he going to play? Landry Shamet? I mean, come on now. Drew, what are your thoughts here?
Well, I think there's only one flaw with your statement, Rich, and that's to use reasonable when discussing New York Knicks and their fan base. I think that's the only issue you have there. No, as a guy who really has watched a lot of the playoffs, not a lot of the regular season, I totally agree with Cam's point. I think he fits the players you have decided to build around for the most part, like a glove. I also think some of it is.
What about Jay Wright?
That would actually be. That would be probably the most full circle moment. The Nova Knicks coached by Jay Wright.
Wait, actually, that makes so much sense.
It actually makes
But-
they could, because it's the NBA, so they could throw him. They could find whatever number it took to get. Jay Wright keeps saying, "I don't want to coach, I want to coach," but they could find the number, unlike a college probably could.
It's Jay Wright.
But Jay Wright retired because college was too much.
But did he retire because he was kind of saw the landscape
in pro ball?
changing?
Pro ball, you have a lot of supporting cast. You have more supporting cast.
But I think the argument
it's not a drain. Like, you don't have to go into people's living rooms and some kid's living room, in Queens and beg him to be on your team and have dinner and at his grandmother's, and she can't cook worth a damn, but you got to eat the food. You don't have to do shit like that.
Well, I think the argument too is the NBA is, to a degree, you could argue probably more front, it's just more up front. You offer guys contracts, and sure, there's some talking and recruitment, but you're not doing all the recruiting and the money. It's more of a level playing field in the sense that you kind of know the resources you have to play with, versus you're in college and you've got some schools like Duke with an unlimited budget and you're trying to recruit against that. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. I don't know if they can pull him out, but I think if Jay Wright comes back to basketball, I don't see it being in college. I do see it probably being pro, just because they could hit whatever price point it would take to get him out. Whereas a college, I mean, we're talking about millions of dollars not being good enough, but a pro team could be all we'll give you literally whatever you want. There's no infractions, there's no issues. Whatever it takes to get you, we'll give it to you. Mm-hmm. And we have a roster that he probably would have handpicked to a degree already. He would have probably pushed to have all those Nova guys there, and they're already there. So I don't know. I mean, I've never been the biggest Thibs guy, because I love the great. He's always his style. I always thought would have worked better in a college setting where you can kind of really build that culture where you're dealing with pros, where that meat grinder. We're gonna sure, guys like Brunson fit that bill. Mikal Bridges fit that bill. Does Karl-Anthony Towns? I don't know. I think he played really well, but I mean, come on, Karl-Anthony Towns wasn't really competing on defense. I mean, Brunson really wasn't either. So I think it was a really knee-jerk reaction to what I agree with Rich being a really solid. I mean, you got to 6 games in the Eastern Conference Finals. You didn't get bounced in the first round, but I think there also could be some finger pointing to the players. I still question if Cat and Brunson can be the guys. I think Brunson's an awesome player, and I love to see what he's done, and he proved me wrong. But there is an argument that when you're dribbling the ball and you're really ball dominant because you're small, so you have to have the ball in your hand because you have to create for yourself how you want it. And you have a guy like Cat, where Cat's got all the offensive talent in the world, but I feel every time he does something on offense, I look at a defensive possession where he gets blown by or spun off of. So it's can you win with
those? Or
he
doesn't close out. He closes out a half hour late.
Yeah, can you win with those guys being your 1 and your 2? Probably not. And I don't think that's a Thibs issue. I think that's just the roster as is. I think he milked everything he could out of that roster. So I don't know. But I agree. I think coaching wise, NBA wise,
I think with a couple of key players off the bench, if they had if they had a couple of key pieces off the bench. Now I'm talking about DiVincenzo players, Malik Beasley type players, or or Isaiah Hartenstein like players, then, if they had like two or three of those, then they'd be in the money, but yeah, right now they don't have that. Cam?
Yeah. I don't know. I think stylistically you could argue like this team could use a little bit more of like an offensive minded coach. Because I think the one knock I could probably put on Tibbs, like I've never minded the minutes. I've never minded like the defensive mindset, playing guys through injuries, like didn't care about any of that with Tibbs. But he kind of has like a Doc Rivers style offense. It's just kind of, I don't know, there's not a lot of movement. Bridges, it's hard to get Bridges involved sometimes. It's hard to get OG involved sometimes because
Well,
there's just not.
that would end under Jay Wright. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think he would get Brunson back to playing, because I think one of the biggest weaknesses in the Knicks is when they need. I know he was clutch this year, Brunson, but to me, there's just too many times when it really comes crunch time, and you watch him dribble, 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 and he can't really, create, like others, and he gets off a shit shot.
I mean, it's life with a 6-foot point guard when you got a 6'5" guy guarding him. I don't care how good you are, at some point that matters. And I
Right.
totally agree that 20-second dribbling to shoot a contested volley with Andrew Nemhard's hand in your face, at some
And I
point
hate that,
runs
but you
out.
never saw that kind of play at Villanova.
For sure.
I mean,
He
what
would-
you would see a lot of times, he would take it into the post, and he would operate out of there. But also, one of the features of Villanova's offense was good, better, best. Move that ball would constantly be moving, whipping around the outside, and then they would also then dump it in the. But a lot of times that was keyed off of Brunson. If Brunson could take his man into the post, or create a double team, and then that started the good, better, best movement. Any final thoughts on Tibbs? So I'm going to ask you one last. I'm going to ask you. I'm thinking Jay Wright's in. What are you guys thinking?
I any way that you could pry Ty Lue away from the Clippers or Van Gundy?
Van Gundy's a thought, but I don't know.
Yeah, Ty Lue would be the one
I
guy.
missed Van
Like, if
Gundy
we
on
could get him
TV.
off of that team,
What's that?
he's a hell of a coach. To me, it's just like if you're just saying, "Oh, we'll pay anybody, whoever," I would want to pry Ty Lue away.
Yeah.
Well, here,
Just
one of
kind
my
of go
first
after.
worries was the players really seem to like Tibbs, and I'm worried that they're going to be disgruntled. And the only
Yeah,
way
it's
you're
definitely
gonna
an injury.
the only way you're gonna avoid that to a large degree is by hiring Jay Wright.
And also, if they're changing the head coach, is Brunson's dad also gonna be able to stay on the staff?
Interesting.
That just seems like that would cause a lot of problems. It's just like Tibbs kind of has a understanding with him, it seems like. But if you get a new coach that's coming in, getting paid all this money, is he gonna want to listen to?
Well, I think Brunson knows a Philadelphia guy, and Jay Wright probably knows him pretty well. So Jay Wright would probably keep him.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Drew?
true.
Who's your
I
pick?
think I
Who's
put
your
it this
pick
way.
here?
I think the one that makes the most sense and would be like really cool would be Jay Wright. I just don't know if it happens. I think I like Cam's point. I think if you can spend the money and get like a Ty Lue to like make the jump and pry him away from the Clippers, who are kind of running on fumes over there. Like they're based that team has got maybe one more kind of run in them. That'd probably be the best of both worlds. And I think the one that is most likely in sense of just like it's easy, it's plug, it's play, and it's not awful as Malone. Like I think like those are the three ways I'd rank. It's like the easiest, simplest band-aid where it's like people will probably be like, okay, sure, it's Malone. I think the one that is probably the sneaky move that would be really cool would be Ty Lue, because I think he could do some really, really good offensive evolution there while still understanding how to work with star players, still get strong effort from those guys. I mean, if you can coach James Harden and be competitive with that dude and get that dude to try to buy into things, I think you can get anybody to. And then Jay Wright would just be kind of a mind blower, which would be really cool and it'd be really interesting to see. But I think the big thing is they have the money to do it, but does Wright want to go potentially put does he want to go that route, potentially stain that resume because he walked away at the height, like, he walked away up here in the coaching spheres. And like, it's, if he comes back, would he be willing to put that risk and then leave that taste? Because, yeah, Patino did it with the Celtics, but then he got back into college and won more. So people forget that. It feels like if Wright comes out, he's done. Like, that would be his last coaching stop. And if it doesn't go well, does he want to put that on there? So I would probably rank it that way. Malone, most likely, just for ease. Lou would be the best NBA fit. And we want chaos and we want to make it interesting. We want the NBA to be fun. Give me Jay Wright.
All right. So how about the Western Conference Finals? We talked about the East, went on there. The Western Conference Finals were disappointing to me. And first of all, it's like every game was a damn blowout. Even Minnesota's win was maybe the worst blowout of them all. What the hell is this about teams not showing up? Because if you lose by more than 20 at this level, there's something wrong with your effort. In my mind. I was really disappointed in Minnesota. I thought Oklahoma City was going to win this series, but at the same time, I thought Minnesota had a really good chance to at least drag it to 6, maybe 7, and possibly even win it. And they weren't even close, except that one game where Oklahoma City decided to take an extra day off. So Drew, is Minnesota that bad and Oklahoma City that good, or something weird going on there with all these blowouts?
Yeah, I do think Oklahoma City is that. I do think they're that good. I think they literally check every box you want, whether it's individual archetypes that they have. They have the superstar in Shea. They have the do everything kind of second wheel in Jalen Williams. They have the big who is both the modern big with the ability to stretch the floor, move out on the perimeter, but also defend the rim. Like they check a lot of those boxes. They're deep. They have size. They defend. So I don't want to take anything away from OKC. They are a very good team and have been the favorite to probably win the title for the last 2 months minimum. And I think they deserve that. Again, maybe as a guy who doesn't watch a lot of NBA anymore in the regular season, I also think the Timberwolves were vastly overrated. I think everyone put a lot of stock into the Lakers, which I was like Luka LeBron. I would always question why that like it was a Lakers move more like optically than it was basketball wise. So I'm not surprised they beat them. And then they beat obviously a short-staffed Warriors team that had no Steph. And then, Jimmy, I do think was playing injured after that fall he took in the Rockets series. And let's be real, outside of those two, the Warriors aren't that good. They need more help. And then they ran into a good team and got completely buzzsawed. And I'm going to say something that, I've stood on. I think Rudy Gobert is overrated. I'm tired of. Look, here's my litmus test for it. You can throw metrics and awards. If you play for your national team and you have the accolades you have and you're getting benched in the Olympics, you're not that good. You're not that good.
He did.
You're
He
not
did.
That
He sat on the bench for the guy who played Ubaselli, plays for the Sixers.
What NBA like supposed defensive player, all-star caliber player ever has played on their Olympic squad or national squad?
Beside the American team.
Besides the American team, I don't count them. Like that's not out on the international teams, the non-American teams. They don't exist. Ginobili was the guy. The Gasol brothers carried that team. Wemby is a kid
Jokic and
Bogdanovich. Yeah. Anyways, and I also maybe people won't like this. I think Anthony Edwards is overrated. I think he is super talented,
definitely think he's not ready for prime time.
But I think he's overrated in the sense of his archetype is fun. But
I'm wondering if he was hurt.
Maybe that's what it was. But I'm like, he's a 6'5", 6'6" shooting guard who's really explosive athletically and he can score the basketball. But like, that's not something that like he's not like a unicorn-esque. Like he's not special in the sense of like a Wemby or a Jokic where we haven't really seen these types of players before. He doesn't really make others better, in my opinion. He's not a knockdown shooter. He can score, but scoring and shooter don't go hand in hand. So I think he's super talented, but I'm like, I don't know. I love the attitude. I love the swag. I think the NBA needs more of that. It needs more guys that are competitive like that. But I'm like, I don't know, man.
Which ironically was my knock on him coming out of college.
Yeah.
Why I wasn't in love with it because I didn't know if he was a competitor.
But like, I don't know, man. Like I just think like if you're that dude, And I get it. Like Julius Randle is probably not the greatest number two, and I think Gobert is incredibly overrated. And like part of the reason I always joke, it's part of the reason I quit Menlo is because a volleyball coach there tried to tell me that Gobert was better than all these other guys. And but like I don't know if you get dogged like that. If you're that guy, you
Well,
don't get dogged.
we're not even sure he's better than Nas Reed because I don't think he is.
No, I agree. So I don't know. I think I was really disappointed. Maybe that's just a hot take. And again, I don't watch the NBA all the way through, so somebody who's watched all 82 Wolves games might have words for me, but I care about the playoffs and you got dogged. Like if you're that dude, you don't get embarrassed like that. It
Right.
wasn't close. Like him and Shea
Yeah. To
went head to
me,
head, it wasn't close. Who
to
the better
me,
player
I
was.
think you're right. You know, Gobert is problematic, just like Karl Anthony Towns is problematic.
Problematic for sure.
But Anthony Edwards, to me, has proven that he is not ready, unlike, say, a guy like Luka Doncic, who kind of seems to raise his game to these moments. It seems to be like impossible to stop at times, you know, in these moments. Anthony Edwards kind of seems to kind of disappear a lot at times. So let's talk to somebody who's watched 82 games of the Minnesota Timberwolves season and ask Cam his thoughts on the Western Conference Finals. What the hell's wrong with Minnesota, or is Oklahoma City that good?
OKC's just that good.
Wow.
I think I definitely, Drew, I can agree with some of your criticisms for Ant. I think the reality is like he's still just like he's 23 years old.
Sure. And that's fair too.
Right?
That's fair too.
I think even like he got some flack for his reaction of like not being devastated that they lost. And it's like honestly, I can't really fault his answer of being like, no, why? I'm 23 and I'm in the conference finals. Like that's a pretty big step in the right direction.
But it was kind of that. It was kind of that attitude, though. Some of those things that he displayed in his year at Georgia that made me say, "Man, I just don't know if this guy has that edge to win an NBA championship." I'm just saying, to someone like me, it kind of pulls at you. You know, I want to see you mad. I want you to go up to the team that beat you and punch them. Don't hug them and kiss them and say good luck. So obviously, I'm an old school guy, and I've never quite. I understand it, and I understand sportsmanship, but I agree with I've reacted both ways when I've competed. Sometimes I'm pissed off at my opponent, and sometimes I'm like, man, I just got beat. I did my best, or maybe I didn't do my best. So maybe I'm really mad at myself. So I'm not. If I'm mad at myself, I'm certainly going to not take it out on my opponent. So I get it. I get it.
I think that they really were just outmatched. I think, too, I always got to give a little shout out to Scott Foster in these finals.
Did you get my email? Did you get my email? I forwarded the list that the NBA sent out.
No, I haven't. I saw it. I haven't looked at it yet.
Yeah, Scott Foster's on the 12 referees that will be doing the finals.
God bless. Of course he is.
It's like his 18th year or something.
I know how to bet those games. I'm gonna be waiting for those. No, I think like, it's a cop out. This is one of the smallest things, but like, and it's been a debate around the league for weeks and weeks now. But like, Shea is frankly just officiated in a way that no other playoff player is officiated. I think it was especially difficult for the Wolves to deal with and really like defend Shea in a way that was effective. First, like because of the way he is officiated, but I think too, Denver had a lot of success by zoning up against Shea and really just taking away his driving lanes, always showing him two defenders constantly, especially at the top of the key where he's just so good, both isolating and coming off a pick and roll. I think, Minnesota's just not really built to play zone. They play very little zone throughout the year. They didn't really play much zone at all in this matchup. And I think, if you're a scorer like Shea, when you come from this series where you're facing this defense that's built to stop you versus, you almost get like a breath of fresh air. Like, oh, I'm just going back to man. Awesome. Let me go cook. And I think that freed up all of the other Thunder players to really thrive as well. Versus, you had guys that had really up and down games in that Denver series against the Timberwolves. Jalen Williams was thriving. Chet Holmgren had some awesome games, and he made Gobert look stupid sometimes, as he looks more and more these days. So yeah, I just think like ultimately for the Wolves, not a good matchup, not a team that they're built to play against. And I think too, the reality with that team, I think you have some guys that are looking forward to next season. Like, am I going to be here? Right? I think
Nas Reed, Julius Randle.
Yeah, Nas Reed has a foot out the door, maybe. Gobert has to be wondering if they're going to retain him, if they're going to try and, move off of his contract. And of course, Randall too. Like, he had a really good playoff run. He didn't play all that great in that series. Is he going to get an extension with the team? I don't know. So I think,
yeah, I mean, I think Reed is really the critical piece. I think maybe, you get a rim protector who doesn't start, like a Mitchell Robinson, and you let Gobert go, you let Randall go, and then you find another piece to complement Edwards.
Yeah, take a little bit of a fresh start.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's
all right. So let's move on. We're going to move our final thing with picks of the week. We'll talk about the NBA Finals, but before then, we got a couple more things in the notebook. One is the latest thing with Zion. Of course, Zion's career, I would say, has been a incredible disappointment. And I think, my knock on him coming out of the draft is, will he stay healthy? The answer so far has been no. But this is a lot more serious. We know he's had some nonsense with women, off the court stuff. But this is serious allegations of rape, in false imprisonment, so forth. The question, though, is this happened a number of years ago? I don't want to say. I better look at the article before I say something I regret. I think it was within the last 5 years.
I think 2020 was
yeah.
the last.
So she knew him. She it was in a debatable, questionable how serious the relationship was, but it was between 2018 2023. So she basically is filing a civil lawsuit. And I guess the problem I've always have in these instances, I'm not making any determination here, and the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. But when you go for a civil lawsuit without going for a criminal lawsuit, it comes into question, are you trying to extort money? It's just a natural question here, and I'm no Zion fan. I'm certainly no Zion defender. But the question is, why weren't legal proceedings taken at the time or somewhere near the time? And then when you could have gone through the legal system, criminal justice system, as opposed to trying to get money. So that brings everything into question. That's my take on it. Gentlemen, do you have anything to add here? I mean, how much does this affect Zion's future? Your view of him?
I think you nailed it, Rich. Like, a lot of times, I think based on the accusations, like, if that is, something that they could substantiate with evidence, like, why would you not go for criminal court?
Yeah, because you can always go for civil later.
Descriptions.
You can go for criminal and civil.
Yeah, and I think too, realistically, like, this is pretty far along, time wise.
Yeah.
From the incidents.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think realistically, like this will get settled outside of court, and people will just move on from it. Does it look bad? Absolutely. Um, will it probably affect some of his, stock around the league? Probably a little bit. Will it affect some of his endorsement deals? I would not be shocked. I mean, if like John Morant's endorsement deals are, you know, in question for, him not even breaking the law, Zion's probably should be. So, you know, um, in a way, this kind of comes with like being a public figure these days.
Yep, yep.
You can see both sides of it that way, but like realistically, like if anything's gonna come out of it, it's gonna come out of court, not for us to make comments about, but definitely a shitty
Yeah,
situation.
yeah. It's
Zion,
I don't want to cast aspersions either way. I'm just saying,
Mhm.
from my, and I don't want to,
Oh no, yeah, no,
from
that's what
my
I'm saying.
point of view, it just I start to get suspicious when the criminal justice system hasn't been approached. I mean, like that's what you do when something horrible happens to you. You call the police. You don't call your lawyer and say, I want money from this person. That's just not the
Mhm.
first reaction. So it seems to be thought out, and it wouldn't be the first time. I mean, Jerome Bettis was the victim of a case where someone tried to accuse him of rape and tried to extort money, and it was proven. He fought it, and he fought it, and he proved that she was lying and trying to extort money. So Drew, you have any thoughts here?
I mean, you guys hit the nail on the head. It's not for us to cast those final judgments. There's a reason, regardless if it's criminal or civil, that there is a procedure, and there's going to be much more qualified people than us to debate, discuss, and go about this. I just think from a basketball standpoint, I do not know how the Pelicans don't get rid of this freaking guy at this point. He's I've been saying get rid of him for years now. Like he's just for whatever reason, he's not bought in. He doesn't care about basketball. Like I don't. Why are you hanging on to this guy? This is a bad look for your. It's a bad look for your organization. It's a bad look because even though I think some of the questions we have are legitimate, we know he does have a checkered past with just his interactions and I think his relationship with women in general. He doesn't take care of his body. Some of that might be his fault. Some of it might not be his fault. I get it, but like, just move off this dude because it almost feels like you're beholden him for literally nothing. He has cleared 60 games twice in his career. He has missed a full season. Like he's been under 30 games or less three times in his career. Plus, like why is Zion Williamson at all allowed to have this much power? What it feels like over a
Yeah, and
franchise?
they got rid of Luca because he wasn't in
Yeah,
shape. What?
that were like a franchise that 2 years ago we thought was trending upward. Their playoff run when the kind of the emergence of Jose Alvarado, we thought like, wow, this team, in spite of Zion, was trending upwards, and they were well coached by Coach Green, and they were scrappy, and they had some pieces. They drafted, I mean, they got Trey Murphy, they got Herb Jones, guys that we were high on, like, and you're beholden to this fat dude who doesn't care about basketball. Like, we'll call it what it is. Like, brother, I run every day with a bad knee just because it helps clear my head. I like to stay in shape. Hand me $20 million a year. I'll run, swim, and bike. I'll run an Ironman marathon every month for
I'll
20
do
million.
those things while smoking.
Yeah, like so I'm done with Zion.
You
It
could
really
really
pisses me off. It takes me back to an old quote from one of my favorite runners ever, which is to give anything less than your best is to sacrifice the gift. You have a gift. You were God given with this athletic ability, and at some point down the line, you did put the effort to to become a player that could go to Duke and get to draft in the NBA. I'm not taking that away from you, but you have sacrificed the gift because you have stopped giving your best. Because if I watch guys like a 6 foot Brunson compete at that level with his limitations, there's no reason you cannot have a similar impact with all of your tools. So I'm done with Zion. I hope this isn't. I hope nobody was true. I hope this isn't true for the sake of the victim and all this. But I'm done with this dude. Trade him. He's someone else's problem. Tearing the studs down.
I think the only way you get the best out of him is, and these teams don't seem to exist anymore, but back in the day, sometimes you could send a problem child to the Celtics or the Lakers that had Magic and Kareem or Bird and McHale.
Sure.
And if you didn't shape up, they would kick your ass in the locker room.
Yeah, it was a different era, though. I think there was
it's
higher
kind of like
standards.
the
Different
soap
era.
and the sock deal. I don't know if we have that mentality in the NBA anymore. And I don't know how many teams, Golden State has that veteran presence, but how many other teams actually have that veteran presence of guys that are, all about winning?
It gets really hard to tell a guy what to do when his whole life in this modern era he's been told how great he is, and he has the money to look anybody in the
Right,
face and go screw you. I've made
right,
generational wealth in 5 years of doing nothing. I'm generationally wealthy. John Williamson tomorrow and go, you know what? I hate basketball and disappear out the face of the earth. He has more money than I will ever make.
right.
And I guarantee you, relative to what I do, I work harder than Zion does. Doesn't matter. You
Right.
know, it's just we've kind of created a system. That's a whole other argument of player empowerment and all that. But this is like the dark side of that, in my opinion, where Zion has been given everything the moment he stepped foot in the NBA. He was the first round pick. He's got contract extensions. They've defended him.
Yeah, the contract extension was crazy.
And all he's done.
That's when they had a chance to do something.
Yeah. So, it's what it is. I'd be shocked if he's a Pelican next year. I think the Pelicans are just continuing to prove that they're like joke franchise if they keep him around, but who knows?
And see, that's where I see a lot of teams going wrong. They seem to give these extensions out like, well, if we don't give him the extension, we're going to lose our number one draft pick. Yeah, but if you pay him and he continues to play 30 games every season, then you're going to not be able to add real players who actually want to win.
I would take Isaiah Hartenstein over Zion Williamson because Isaiah Hartenstein's going to be there for me. He's going to play for me. He's going to compete. I don't have to worry about all this other crap. Like, yes, player to player, Zion's statistically far more is better. But give me Andrew Nembhard over Zion Williamson any day of the week. I'll sign the checks for Andrew Nembhard till the day he retires, or players of that ilk. You know what I mean? Dante DiVincenzo, those guys any day of the week. But that's what it is.
I hear you. All right, last topic as far as I know, unless you guys have something else you want to talk about, and that's TNT. Inside the NBA is not done, but it's done with TNT and moving over to my favorite place on earth, ESPN, which is owned by the evil empire of Disney. And my feelings is, first of all, I want to say this about the TNT. I don't think there's in any sport, except for maybe racing. I listen to everything on racing. But when it comes to basketball, halftime shows, I don't watch them. I usually watch games recorded, and I skip through the halftime show, move on to the second half. With TNT, never do that. And I don't do it with the NCAA coverage either. I just want to hear those guys talk. I just enjoy it. They might not tell me anything I don't know. They probably won't tell me anything I don't know. I just enjoy it. With ESPN's halftime shows, most of them, you'd have to pay me to listen because I hate most of the people that they have doing the halftime shows. No matter what the sport is, I don't know who does the hiring there. I don't know what it is about that network, but man, they just, whatever they do seems to grate on me. So my feeling is, they are going to fuck up inside the NBA because ESPN is so corporate driven and so money driven. For example, you might say, what are you talking about? All right, I'll give you an example. When you record games, there are little markers that show up, at least on the television station I record through, or the television network, whatever you want to call it, where I get my TV from. There's little markers to show you where the commercials are. And so you can fast forward right up to the end of that marker and go right through the commercials and boom, hit the play button and you didn't see a commercial. With TNT plays their 5 or 6 commercials in between NBA timeouts and boom. ESPN has this little thing that they do. They'll play like 3 or 4 commercials. Then they'll come back to the game for literally 15 to 30 seconds, and they'll say something like, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has just hit his last 4 shots, and they'll show highlights of him making, 4 shots. And then they go to commercial again. So for 15 seconds they're on, but me, always a dumbass, always keep on forgetting that that's what they do. So I end up, boom. And then, but they add extra commercials in there. The commercials are actually longer for ESPN games football and basketball than they are for Fox or other networks. I just don't enjoy anything ESPN does, and I am convinced that they will somehow screw up inside the NBA. Now, you might say, Rich, what the hell's your problem? ESPN's fine. I have a problem. I don't know if it's me. Obviously, they're making tons of money, and they're trying to gobble up everything in the sports world. But I just think it's too corporate, it's too capitalistic, and they'll screw it up.
You're absolutely right.
You guys are just staring at me like zombies.
Oh, I was gonna let Cam go.
No,
I saw Cam.
you're absolutely right. Like no, ESPN sucks ass. Please
I
give
have
me
a question for you guys. We like to do some betting on here. What is the over under? Like how, I don't know how many games before Stephen A. Smith has a chair, like a permanent chair on the table.
Oh my God. That would totally ruin it for me.
No, 100%. I 100%. I'm just saying, how many games we're gonna get through before he is at the table and he's damn near a permanent fixture?
How much you want to bet that they just fire Kenny?
Oh my God.
Stephen A. in there.
No.
Make Stephen A. run to the board.
Oh God. Can you imagine?
You know what? If that happened, though, the one thing would be is the night that Shaq loses it and just strangles the crap out of him.
Oh my! I'm just imagining my perfect hell where I turn inside the NBA or the crew and I see Ernie get handed a pink slip and they slot Stephen A. Smith in the chair and they slide in Kendrick Perkins next to Shaq and then they tell it and oh my God. Oh God.
It would be like the Luka trade all over again, except for all the Mavs fans.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I understand that inside the NBA is not and Rich, you were right about it. They're not the best in terms of pure analysis. They don't always talk. Most of the time, they're not even talking basketball, but it is culturally significant to us as sports fans because they get it. They understand what the viewers want. It's awesome. And then there is something valuable about having these all-timers speaking about the game, having an endearing host, kind of juggling. There's something about it that just can't be replicated. And I'm like, the moment you stick.
No.
I have
because Stephen A. Smith says stuff to draw attention to Stephen A. Smith.
Exactly.
Those guys are so comfortable in their own skins. All four of them.
Yep.
All four of them are so comfortable in their own skins. They have nothing to do. They're not trying to sell you anything. They're just being themselves.
Yeah. The moment I get Stephen A. Smith, trying to one up a Charles Barkley one-liner to be about, look how funny I am at Stephen A. Smith, I'm going to freaking lose my mind. And Charles Barkley actually said something on, I think, the Dan Patrick show, more along the lines of, he's like, I got like 2 years. He goes, I'm doing it. He said the only reason he's making the transition is so everybody, because he's the kind of the big fish, right? He's like kind of the prize of the group, even more so that he's committing so everyone else is able to make the transition and help make sure there's some continuity there and all that. And I respect that, but
if he's the big fish, Ernie is right there next to him.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I think he's kind of the famous one, and at the Charles Barkley sound bites. But I'm the other over under I want to propose is how quickly for Charles Barkley goes completely off script on purpose, just to push, because TNT they let him go off script. I'm very curious to see how quickly he gives them the finger, metaphorically, by just going on some inappropriate rant about fat women in San Antonio or something.
The over-under is 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Yeah. I was going to say, it's like, I think the moment.
Literally the second they do the pan in to the studio, he's probably already going to be yapping about something.
Yeah.
Like, the food over here at ESPN sucks ass.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think he's going to like his employers. They are cheap. They've notoriously.
Did you ever hear his rant about ESPN?
Wait. Let me finish. Though you pick up, but they are notorious for not paying their people. They are notorious for having an environment where sexual harassment thrives, and I just think he's going to hate working for him.
Yeah,
he fired Rachel Nichols, who was like the one reporter that people consistently liked on ESPN.
Yeah.
What else? Fired Jalen Rose.
They got rid of everybody, and a lot of women have left there because of sexual harassment. starting with Aaron Andrews years ago.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, that's true.
But what were you going to say? Did I hear?
Charles, like a couple years ago, they were joking on the set, like on the air about ESPN, and he's like, he made a comment. This was back when KD was with the Warriors because I watched the game. It was a game. I remember he said, "You're not gonna work me like a dog and not pay me." And he basically was talking about ESPN, saying like, "You're not gonna work." He goes, "They got ESPN, ESPN2, ESPN3, ESPN." And then he started going, Charles Barkley brand. Yeah, and he's like, "They're gonna have me on ESPN Deportes saying muy bien, gracias."
What about the NBA Finals where they had like Fran Fraschilla and Jay Billis and another college? Oh, Corey Alexander. They had all these college guys doing NBA games.
Yeah,
They don't even have their own. They brought the college guys over to do their NBA stuff. What?
Yeah.
You're that cheap that you can't even have your own NBA announcers who focus
which you
on
would
the
think
NBA?
would be the more profitable ones anyways. Like you would think it'd be the other way almost. We'd have NBA guys doing because the NBA guys probably would make more in theory. I don't know.
What's your reaction the first time you heard Jay Billis do an NBA? You're like, my reaction is like,
make any sense.
Yeah, my reaction is, what the hell does he know about the NBA?
Yeah, nothing. One thing I would kind of get a kick out of is like on an off night when Shaq is like out doing something else, just put Kendrick Perkins there and act like he's Shaq the whole time. I would get a freaking kick out of that. Whenever Shaq got back, he'd be so pissed, I'm sure.
That would be very funny. Sorry for laughing so much, but that was funny. So do we have anything more to talk about the NBA before we move on to our picks of the week and our NBA Finals analysis?
Nah, I want to hear how much money I've lost.
All right, so here we go. So it's a little complex at this point because we got some loose ends here. But before the playoffs started, all right, a few of us were on the show. It was Joey, Sammy, and myself. Joey picked the Celtics and also picked a long shot with the Nuggets. He only put a little bit of money, so he lost $20 there. Sammy's still alive at plus 170. He had 30 on the Thunder. I went with the Celtics as well and the Knicks. I put 30 on the Celtics, 10 on the Knicks. So I'm minus 40 there. So Joey and I haven't done the net totals because we still got things open. So we're trying to figure it out. Now, in the Western Conference and Eastern Conference Finals, I did the best because I had Indiana and Minnesota, but I put more on Indiana. Plus, they were getting some odds. Joey almost broke even, a little bit positive. He won a total of $2.50 by doing the same, but also same number. He put 10 on each. Cam went with the chalk. He went with the Knicks and OKC. Of course, the Knicks were minus 150, so he ended up losing 25. So basically, Cam is minus 75. Drew is still in the overall standings. Where are you, Drew? Oops, I just hit the wrong button.
I'm at 138. I'm second behind Josh. But
all right, so you're at plus 138. You have plenty of capital, and I'm about plus 50. So that's actually going to influence what I do here with my picks, because I want to finish. I don't want to finish in the red. I don't want to finish in the red. In fact, you know what? I have been doing so well a lot with race car driving that I actually moved out of the red on FanDuel for my entire career of betting on FanDuel. I am plus. Finally got over the hump there. So yeah, thank goodness to the Indy 500. I cleaned up there. All right. So we have the odds for the championship. I want to ask you before I read the odds, I want to ask you guys, start with Drew. If these teams played a 7-game series 10 times, who wins the most and how many?
Oh, so you're saying if they played 7 10-game series,
No,
Or sorry,
10
7-game
seven-game series.
10 7-game series.
Right.
How many of those series would
OKC, or unless you like Indiana to win, how would it work out?
Cam, do you have a thought on that? You can go first. I got to think about that.
I feel like OKC wins 7 of them.
I was going to say, I think OKC wins 7 or 8, probably.
All right. I was going to say 8. All right. So at 8, that breaks down to 4-1. All right. Because 8-2, 4-1. Hold that number. Okay. So that would be OKC winning 8 of 10 7-game series. The bookies are telling us, based on at OKC at minus 725 and at Indiana plus 525, the bookies are saying if they played 7 times, OKC would win 6. Because basically what you do is you take the average of the favorite number, of the lower number, and then make them both positive, average them up, and that would be about 625. 625 is basically 6-1. So at 6-1, based on those odds, Indiana, if you think it's 6-1, or in our case, we seem to think it's 4-1, Indiana would be the smart bet. So just keep that in mind when we get to my pick. But I just wanted to run through the math there. So it's basically 6-1, but really, if you want OKC, you got to bet 10 to you got to bet 72.50 to win 10. If you want Indiana, you bet 10 and you win 52.50. So start with you, Drew, or start with you, Cam, because you're alphabetically up here first. Cam, what are you thinking in this series? How long does it go? Who wins? And what's going to be your bet to get out of that $75 hole?
Well, since I'm in the hole,
yeah, you might as well go for it.
underdog.
You might as well go for it. Well, no,
I think I do think realistically, dude, this Indiana team just has some kind of voodoo magic going on. Like in hindsight, I probably wouldn't have taken the Knicks. I more so did it as a bit since I really took Scott Foster. I should have taken Reggie Miller voodoo magic in that series. So I'm not like at plus 525. And honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if those odds get boosted a little bit more even, just to kind of draw people in for the bet. But yeah, I'll take Indiana with my negative $75.
Oh, wow. You'll win big. Whoop. I screwed up again. I'm having technical issues over here. 75 on Indiana. Now, your feelings though on who wins this? Who do you really? I mean, if you had to just bet it straight up, you going?
No, I mean, no. If I was betting straight up, I think OKC wins this going away. Like I think, I don't think that Indiana matches up well defensively at all. Really with anybody, on the OKC Thunder team. Like I think they have a really hard time matching up with Shea. They have a really hard time matching up with Jalen Williams. They have a really hard time matching up with Chet because I think he just outclasses Miles Turner in terms of speed. And then on the defensive end, I think it's going to get really hard for Tyrese Halliburton to really produce. We saw that happen with Ant in the pick and roll, last series that just completely shut down the Wolves offense. I think it's going to be a really, really difficult time for Indiana to create offense consistently.
Yeah. If maybe they had a more interior presence, would you be? They really don't have that interior go-to guy like some teams would. Would that?
I mean, Siakam is. I just think. I think that's probably like the one guy for the Pacers that has a positive matchup. There's not really a perfect defender for Siakam. But I mean, they defended Randall a lot of the time with Caruso, and it was pretty effective. So, they've got at least guys to throw at Siakam. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's so much the interior presence that's lacking. I think
Well, I'm just thinking,
just think they're
because
outclassed.
because what OKC to me seems to have is all these guys on the perimeter that just can cause all kinds of problems. So if you're a guard-oriented team, you're going to have problems.
Yeah, I think the reality is
And
like
I think that's why Denver gave them some trouble because they weren't so much a guard-oriented team.
yeah, they didn't have to play through pick and roll exclusively. And Indiana doesn't have to do that either. They're really good at getting out in transition and speeding up the game, but
Right.
And they can shoot you out of games. We've seen them do that quite a bit. I don't know. I just think OKC can also get out and run. They're really great at playing the fast game. Really, like they're probably more comfortable doing that. So
Mm-hmm.
I think in those games where people are hyped up for the finals and shooting percentages, of course, always go down. I think it's going to come down to who has the better defense because their offenses are pretty comparable with each other. And OKC's defense is just far and away just so much better than Indiana's.
Right. Right. Drew, what are your thoughts on who wins this series straight up? And in terms of you got money to play with, so you can bet on either team without going into the red. So what are you thinking here?
Yeah, so for betting wise, I got $138 to play with. I'm gonna pride myself on having money. I'm gonna make my dad proud here. I'm gonna bet $38. That excess 38, I'm gonna go on OKC because I got money to play with. That way, no matter what, I'm walking away with $100 in my pocket.
Oh, wait,
But
no,
also,
no, because what we do is,
Negatives.
so like if
yes.
you bet 10, you lose 72.50.
Okay.
So
I'll do an
basically,
even. I'll do an even 30. I'll do an even 30 to keep it simple. Then
even that could take you negative because that would be losing 200 and
100.
something, 220
Got
or
it.
so.
You're not pulling from the. Okay, I see.
Yeah, so you can afford to bet 10 basically.
Nah, we'll put
Or 15. You could go 15.
yeah, I'll keep it. I'm gonna play conservative here. I want to end in the black.
Right,
I see.
exactly. That's what I'm
um,
thinking. I want to be in the black.
Yeah, so I mean I agree. I think Oklahoma wins this series pretty convincingly. I think this is I'm gonna go 6-game series, but it's gonna be kind of like the Pacers Knicks 6-game series where it's like it went 6, but I don't think we ever really had a doubt of who was gonna win. I think the Pacers have proven you can't count them out. I think OKC has also proven that they will let off the gas if they get a lead. Like, if they get up 2-0, I can see the Pacers win that desperation game 3 at home and then Oklahoma kind of refocus or whatever it is. I can see that happening. So I'm going to go 6. I think Halliburton has really he's shown me a lot just in terms of his leadership and as a playoff riser. He's kind of a unique star because I had this debate with my brother about, he's like, well, he's not even averaging 20 points a game, but I was like, okay, but basketball wise, he is a massive engine for that team. I go, it's the playmaking, it is the scoring, it's the clutch shooting, it's the fact he doesn't turn the ball over. I mean, against the Knicks, a team that we thought was, gritty and tough, he had less than 2 turnovers a game. Like that's what makes him what's special. It's not that he's going to go score 30. He can, but that's not his night in, night out game.
It wasn't even his game in college.
Yeah.
He was as much a facilitator as he
Right.
was a scorer.
Right. And then Siakam to me is over the years, maybe kind of eat my words in the sense of, I remember way back when in 2019 when, he was on that team that beat the Warriors. I thought a lot of it, okay, he's great, but he could, at any given game, he could be the fourth wheel on that team and it wouldn't matter. But he's really shown me over the last 2 years, really, that like, hey, I can be the one, I can be the two, but I'm consistently going to be, for the most part, this playoffs. He's been, if not their best guy, the second best guy behind Halliburton. Side note, I think Halliburton should have gotten the player of the Eastern Conference Player of the Year. I don't really have a strong opinion about going to Siakam, but I do believe it should have been Halliburton. But I just think OKC, Cam hit the nail on the head. They're going to have to play through their guards to a degree. And even if the assist numbers are there, I don't think Halliburton's going to not turn the ball over because there's just so many options they can throw at him. You have Wallace, you have Jalen Williams, Shea could pick him up and guard him if he has to. You can put Caruso there. Like there's just so many bodies, so many looks that they can give him. I agree that I think Chet is just a little bit more versatile than Miles Turner. He's kind of like actually the evolution of Miles Turner. Whereas like, Turner was like, oh, he's a big who can protect the rim and shoot threes. It's like, well, Chet's a big who can do that and completely play on the perimeter if he needs to. It's just a depth game, and I do like Indiana's depth overall, but I just think there's more horses in OKC stable. They've just given me no reason to doubt them. I mean, outside of the Nuggets series, they've been kind of in control of the league, what it feels like the last couple of months, pretty convincingly. So, I want OKC to not run away with it for the sake of competition, but I think a pretty easy pick to win. And I say 6. I wouldn't be shocked if it's 5.
All right. So, as I said at the top, I think if these teams played 10 times in the 7-game series, OKC would win 8. I do think Indiana has a chance. I do think the odds makers are favoring OKC a little too much. Personally, I'm not going to bet on the series because I already put a bet pre-playoffs. I had money on 3 of the 4 teams that reached the Final Four. I had just a little money on each, but they were all long shots. I had the Knicks, I had Indiana, and I had Minnesota. And by the way, preseason, my Final Four was, I said the Knicks would play, Boston would beat the Knicks in the East, and I said, I said Minnesota would beat OKC. So I had 3 of the 4 there. I had 3 of the 4 in terms of putting pre-playoff bets. So here's the thing. They're not going to play this series 10 times. They're only going to play it once, and most likely that's going to be OKC. I think these teams match up pretty nicely. I don't think that OKC. I mean, OKC has like a prolific scorer, where Indiana relies more on, one night it's Neesmith, one night it's Nebhard, one night it's Halliburton, one night it's Siakam. So, and that's nice, I think. And so I think they have a chance. And so in this circumstances, I don't want to go in the red for the season. So I'm putting 20 on Indiana, getting plus 525. And I'm not going to do that in real life because I already have a bet on Indiana. So in terms of betting advice, this is tough. But, man, I just don't know if I have enough confidence in OKC to put down $72.50 to win $10. I personally, I think you put a little on Indiana, and if you lose, you lose. But, and that's been my philosophy and most of our philosophy as we've done the NCAAs and, the pros. And you know what? Collectively as a group, we've been winning money. So that system's been working. So that wraps up our NBA Finals analysis and picks of the week. Gentlemen, well, first of all, I want to say thank you to all our listeners. If you want to reach out to us, you can always do so on social media. We're at Hoops Prospects. On Twitter, we're at The Hoops Prospects. On Instagram, and also at Hoops Pros on Facebook. So if you want to reach out, ask us questions for the show about the draft or anything else. And if you ever miss this episode, you can get caught up at hoopsprospects.com. We'll be back next week. We're definitely going to talk more about the NBA playoffs. We're going to definitely be talking about the NBA draft. And specifically, we already know what we're going to be talking about, and that will be international prospects. That's the one area we really haven't discussed, players. So we're going to dive into them a little more deeply and tell you about the top 20 prospects in this draft. So, gentlemen, before I say goodnight, do you have any final thoughts?
Mario St. Supri to the Zags. Kid's going to put his name on the map.
Is that official?
Not official, but it's I'm telling you.
All right.
Shout out the guys on House of Kraus. They've been giving me the info. I feel it's signed, sealed, and delivered.
All right.
Serving paella in Spokane.
Oh, I have a final thought. Drew, hopefully tomorrow, will help me. We have we're going to work out this analytics problem, and we're going to get a draft board up finally. Now, I've had a draft board all season, but I hesitate to put it up without doing the analytics. So it's basically based on eye test and regular statistics, and we went through the top 25 tonight, actually more than that. But yeah, we're going to have a draft board very, very soon. So that's my final thought. Cameron, what's your final thought?
God bless.
Cam's
God bless the
final
team.
thought is the British media should get off Max Verstappen's back. If not, I'm going to fly to England and ring those limey
No.
dicks.
My final thought is God bless the man that bets against Scott Foster in these finals. That's my final thought. They should announce which games he's on. That's what I want.
I wonder if you can find out that information ahead of time.
You can, but it's not scheduled out. I want to see the schedule.
I will look into that. I might be able to find that out.
Usually they just do it a day of, but it'd be nice.
I will see. I will see if it's. I obviously, as member of the media, I have access to their press releases and all that stuff, and some things might not be well publicized, but you might be able to get that. Like there's an NBA website for the media that we can log on and get all kinds of little tidbits. So I might be able to find that information. I will look tomorrow. And Drew and I, are we getting together tomorrow to finalize, get this analytics shit straightened out?
What time works for you? I got to go up to Sonoma at some point, but you're 3 hours ahead. So what time works for you?
All right, we'll figure that out after the show. All right, we'll say goodnight. We'll say goodnight at this point, folks.